Okay, thank you.
Button right there. Press it. And then you should be
I
green
don't
light
think this
on the
one,
top.
do you want to hand it to me, mail me, and I'll turn it up.
Too bad.
Okay, Nathan, can you hear us on the microphone? Oh. Yep. No.
This is the one that was out last meeting. Some of these figures are
Okay.
redacted for some reason.
So there's no way to check the sound to make sure that we're clear.
This is the same one. So this is the one we got last time.
Okay,
Oh, last year.
Right.
That
Listed Ron and Jeff. And so I'm just
oh, okay,
comparing
good,
the
good.
same meeting and these figures are gone.
Y'all need agendas.
Let who know.
I need a stapler.
Okay,
I don't
Eric,
know.
Lyndon, Ristine, you guys have control of unmuting yourselves when you have an opportunity.
Is that my?
So Eric, for your report tonight, and then Ristine and Linda, of course, as board members.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Yep,
Sounds
they
good.
responded.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're all set.
We're waiting for Jim. So just
Oh,
a
we're
second.
still waiting for agendas. Oh, okay.
The one that has a link to this should have been in your email.
All right. I need to get out of this one.
Back here, where it would be due. it talks about 9.1 billion for people to Oregon. That's
This one?
not there.
Yeah, 5559. Yes, it has the links.
I'm curious if they went back. and
I think
found
we're
the recording and realized that maybe there's some information that was incorrect. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So it's- I don't know, actually, I couldn't find it. Oh, it's still over here. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah,
Been
I don't want to
redacted
be left
from-
out.
This is the first page. This is the second page. This is
All
the
right,
third page.
well, I think it's past 6 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. Is everyone here? That's supposed to be here. Is Sarah Cash online?
Yes.
Okay, can she speak if she needs to?
Yeah, she's a budget committee member, right?
Right, yeah, I just didn't know if she had the ability to.
Text. Yeah, have him unmute Sarah Cash. Already got him.
All right. So approval of the agenda. Anyone want to move to approve the agenda? Is there anything we need to add to it?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
One second. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye, sorry.
How do we know if the online people? Will they just speak up if
Thumbs up.
they don't want to? I mean, I'm not used to doing virtual like
Yeah.
this, so.
So Linda and Christine and Sarah,
Miss Christine gave a thumbs up.
I'm a yes.
I'm unmuted now.
okay, I guess we need to know what your vote is on the agenda.
I'm good with the agenda. Could somebody grab me a packet of handouts for my records, please? Thanks,
Laura's gonna email them to you.
thanks.
All right, next is approval of minutes from May 19th. So these are the ones that had some misprints, is that right? Can we know how they got corrected?
I guess I can speak to that. They got corrected by Laura actually having to listen to tape recorder, the recording,
The recorded session.
recorded session.
Cool.
Is that why some of the numbers are redacted from those paragraphs?
I think it's, well,
There's
she had-
some
did you have to almost do
figures.
it all over?
I pretty much did.
Okay,
We found a lot of inconsistencies.
okay. I was just comparing and I was like,
Oh,
there's
yes, yeah, if
information
you're
missing.
Yeah, if you're comparing,
The only change I see would be Terry's last name on
Right.
item 4.
For May 19th, correct? We're
Yeah,
approving that
2022,
one.
yep. I'll make a motion to approve the May 19th, 2022 minutes with the one change noted of Terry Lunsford's name in item 4.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Right, we'll move on to Tuesday, April 25th minutes.
I see the same change in item 6 for Terry's last name.
I was getting bored with that anyway. in the last one.
just add a little spice to your life.
Right.
the adjournment time critical?
I think it's 8:30 actually, if I remember correctly.
Just throwing that out there.
It wasn't an adjournment, was it?
It was
was
recessed.
Recess.
There you go.
It needs to say recessed on it.
At 8:30. I think you're correct.
And so we don't
Meeting at recessed.
add this, any discussion items that any things we discussed. It was mostly just presentation. Is that how it works?
Um,
I guess we need to start walking a little more than that.
We could actually, since this has to be redone, we can actually redo and put some comments if she goes to recorder and.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it's absolutely necessary. I'm just wondering how, I mean, typically when I see board minutes, I would see like this was discussed. No, I mean, not every word for word, but like, this was addressed, this was discussed, this was addressed, or is that gonna all be in your presentation? What
No,
we
I
talked
think,
about.
it needs to be on the minutes actually,
Okay.
and it needs to say recessed, so I would table this. Or, yeah,
Hmm.
next time. So it just table it.
Okay. So I have a quick question. I'm wondering why we don't list the patrons that were attended. Because we have a spot for patrons.
Oh, and Naomi should be down in the patron program. Did we have any patrons? I don't think so.
I think there were some.
There were some
online.
online.
Oh, okay.
And then Jamie mentioned meeting recess, so we'll have to change that. Terry's last name's spelled incorrectly on number 6.
Mhm.
And then we want to add
8:45.
8:35-ish for the end time, and then add things that were addressed or discussed during the meeting. And so do we need a motion to table this, or we just table it to the next meeting?
I believe a motion.
I'll make a motion to table the minutes until corrected.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ryan, second. Sorry.
Was it?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed? All right, moving on. Okay, this must be Lorraine, budget presentation with regards to public comment and questions.
And we're gonna let Sean
Sean?
go first for the educational. report.
Oh, yes. So one of the questions that was posed last time is, and also on email was, what is our educational plan? So there's a couple of ways to answer that. On our district website, you can go to district office and you click on a line for student success. And this is the new project that the Oregon Department of Education is facilitating per legislative orders in terms of redoing the entire continuous improvement plan process. Before, the process was basically the superintendent and leadership team developed the SIP, says, here's a SIP, and away we went. They're wanting us to be more inclusive. And so we've started the process this year. We've done some student surveys, some community surveys, some staff surveys, and we've also filled out a number of questions and submitted them. So if you click on a line for student success, you will see the vast array of information that we have submitted to ODE that's listed right here. It is currently being scrutinized by ODE and evaluated for if we made any errors or not. But you'll see, like, for instance, if you click on the application question number 1. So there's the question that ODE poses. Let me enhance this a little bit for you. This question has, please offer a description of the comprehensive needs assessment process you engaged in and high-level results that needs assessment. Include a description of the data source you use and how that data informs equity-based decision-making, including strategic planning and resource allocations. There's 40 of these questions. So it's very extensive. And then you see what the process is, and then our outcomes in terms of how we responded to this particular question. the data sources we used, the review and the analysis that we went through, and the ways in terms of sharing the information. And all this is required to be posted to our district website. This is step one, folks. Step one of like a 5-year process. So if you want to know what our educational plan is, I would say this is probably a great place to start. Like for instance, we click on plan summary, enhance this too. So this is kind of the summary of how we're focusing on ensure success for all students, monitored by attendance, state assessments, increased graduation support for all high school students with particular attention to 9th graders and seniors, monitored by 9th grade on track data, attendance, graduation rates, 5th year completer rates, MTSS, which is a multi-tiered support system process, and RTI stands for response to intervention data. That's the data that we gather periodically from the students through assessments throughout the year. And we say, okay, what kind of interventions do we need to do, either by group or individual students? And also increase career and technical CTE opportunities, monitored by having an improved plan in place for forestry. Also, you're going to hear an expansion of that in just a second, presented by Mr. Clendenin. Also provide effective social and emotional learning opportunities and meet the mental health needs for all students, monitored by attendance data, MTSS data, and RTI data. And we talked about strategies and how we're going to be spending some of these dollars, included the SIA grant, Measure 98, which is the high school success grant, increased supports for CTE counseling and on-track graduation programs. Here's some of the actions that we're adding to and ensuring that we are trying to keep class sizes small, all the different types of supports. Also in regards to, I mean, you could spend hours and hours on this stuff. There is a place on the, oh, I didn't, okay, hang on. If you go to, I'm sorry, I thought I had this bookmarked. All right, you're going to see me go through this here. You go to Oregon Department of Education. And I'm just going to search for integrated guidance plan. So aligning for student success, integrated guidance. This is the official document. Let me go to the heading here. This is the official document that talks about this project. And what they did is they, over time, the legislature set aside funding for different things like SIA or high school success or those, and there's like 6 different programs. And the response from the school districts was, hey, wait a second, we now got 6 different things we're juggling. Can't we just roll them all into one? So ODE said, hey, great idea. So they did. They rolled it all into one, and it's called the Aligning for Student Success Project. Now, I'm not going to bore with you with all the details. I'm going to show you a graph here that has kind of an explanation of what we're doing. And enhance this a little bit. So you will see the 6 programs that are rolled into this Aligning for Student Success Project. You see high school success, student investment account, which is your SIA grant, continuous improvement planning. I just talked about the continuous, the SIP plan. Career and technical education is a big major component of it. Everyday Matters has to do with student equity, social emotional learning, those sorts of things. And then early indicator intervention systems, that's your MTSS, that's your RTI. So this whole document, and this is 164 pages worth, goes through and picks apart each one of these different programs and shows how it's all going to be integrated into the continuous improvement plan that's going to be developed for the district. Again, we're in stage 1. This is really going to be almost a 3 to 5 year process. And it's going to be, once you get it going, it's going to be kind of a rolling process in terms of a rolling continuous improvement plan. The idea is once you get that boat on the lake, you know, you keep it going. And once you develop that continuous improvement plan, you continue to keep it going. And so it's always active. It's always a working document, and it's tied to district goals, board goals, building goals, teacher goals. It's all integrated together. It is a huge undertaking that I have in my career. I've never seen something of this magnitude by ODE. I get excited about it because I think there's some really neat stuff in there. Like, for instance, if you look at the right-hand part in terms of common goals, well-rounded education, equity advanced, engaged community. They want us to engage the community in these discussions. Strengthening systems and capacity. You know, those are all some of the common goals. And you look at the common element, authentic engagement processes. Authentic is the key word there.
Yeah.
Not just somebody going behind closed doors and look, I got this document. No, there's authentic engagement. Also equity-based decision-making. Now, there's a difference between equity and something being equal. Equity says, you know, you give the resources to the student to make sure that they can attain the same level of somebody that may or may not need less or more resources. It's kind of like a handicap with your golf game. You know, I'm not that good a golfer, but for me to compete with somebody who is, I need a handicap. I need that extra step. I need that extra to help. And that makes it more of an equitable type situation. Also focus on students who have been historically marginalized by the educational system. So they're looking at your at-risk population. At-risk can come in a variety of forms. Maybe they have IEP needs. Maybe they have dyslexia needs. Maybe they have some cultural needs or some social emotional needs. I mean, all those things can be barriers to learning and to education. Also, comprehensive needs assessment. That's very, very critical. And the continuous improvement cycle. So I thought that this graph kind of shows, it summarizes the whole project, and it's not just an overnight deal.
Do you want us to save questions till the end?
Go right ahead. You got a question?
Well, so this isn't really when I think of an education plan, this isn't really what I'm looking for. I mean, there's pieces of it, obviously, in your education plan. What I'm thinking of is more simplified than that. Like, we want to have class sizes no bigger than 20. So how is that reflected in the budget? Or, you know, we're going to have this kind of program in the high school, and
Right.
this is how that's reflected in the budget. So it's like, what is your plan for elementary, middle, and high, and
Right.
and staffing and professional development and all those little pieces, and how
Mhm.
does that? So I would like to see the plan and then see how it's reflected in the budget.
And that'll be that continuous improvement plan that we're right in the middle of.
But we're
developing.
just looking at
looking
23,
at-
24
got
right
it.
now. So where's the plan for 23, 24? That's what,
That's what Eric's going to present on.
okay.
Eric, are you ready?
Unless you guys want him to go on. Okay, that's fine. All right.
Sure, I'm here.
Okay. All right, Eric, take it away. They're asking about what is the plan and vision for K through 12 brick and mortar?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll do the best I can. Okay, so sorry I couldn't be there in person. I've got sick wife and kids and stuff all over the house, so my apologies. So here's the thing. What I'm going to talk about here, I had this exact discussion early last week with our entire K-12 certified staff. So they've already kind of had a good preview of the things I'm going to talk to you guys about today. Obviously, guys, we've got some challenges at this time. We've got a financial crisis. We've obviously experiencing the rifts. We've got declining enrollment. We're juggling a lot of what to do's. And that certainly is pretty daunting for figuring out how do we move forward out of this. And to be frank, when I left that last board meeting, the day we got the resignation from Joe Harris, and knowing his wife Sarah would be right behind that, I was driving home that night, kind of doing the woe is me, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And somewhere in there, I just decided, you know what, guys, we got to accept the challenge and figure it out. And spent a lot of time with this. So the best I could come up with, really thinking about our staff, our kids, the community, things I experience every day in our hallways. And it was kind of actually fortuitous because, you know, we've been spent a lot of time examining what we've been doing in our K-12 things, whether it's our daily bell schedule, the time of day we have our electives, the time of day we have our specials for the elementary kids, just our master schedule in general. And one of the things we really start focusing on was just the programs, outside of, the normal core academic. Let me just say this by kind of long held belief that's nothing new, but I don't know, experienced this long ago, and I've kind of held to this. The most successful schools that I've ever seen have a nice balance of the 4 A's of academics, the arts, activities, and athletics. That usually, creates things for all kids. Maybe not every single thing they would like, but a nice healthy balance to create a strong school culture. So with keeping that framework in mind, I kind of went back to Sean and told him some of my specific thoughts about what I think needed to change and stay within the budget as was proposed, and taking advantage of some attrition and changing bell schedule, changing master schedule. And so this is what I came up with. So most of what I'm going to talk about is actually just geared toward the middle high in particular right now. And that's just kind of round one as we get ready for 23-24. But so basically right now it's a matter of shifting resources. And I guess the best way I can simplify this is when we started to look at changing some of our FTE levels, we were looking for license redundancy. We were looking at obviously having licensures that cover the areas we needed most to provide quality programs and have the most highly qualified people we could for those programs, whether, it was a core academic or a co-curricular opportunity. So we made the decision that we would have one core teacher in each for 7-12 for math, language arts, social studies, and science, and which would allow us to have one physical education teacher, one CTE teacher, and then the available FTE that had previously been Joe Harris, which was within our budget. I have kind of maneuvered things to where I'm now using that to push forward, looking for an implementation of a full-blown ag program. FFA, the works. When I think about the LC community, I think about our kids, think about the families that I've gotten to know so well over the last 4 years. The opportunities to really pursue strong programs of study through forestry and agricultural science. I can't think of anything that hits home better for our particular kids. Now, this is not to say we're going to sacrifice, the kids that are looking for a 4-year college, pathway, or kids that may be looking for military trades, a particular trade school, whatever. This is simply to say we're kind of pushing all in at this point, with Mr. Crow spearheading our forestry program, which earlier in the week he submitted the full program of study to the state of Oregon. It's pretty impressive. Sean had a preview of that. I'm sure at some point we'll make sure everybody has a chance to put their eyes on that. But it's a pretty impressive package of classes that will be a couple year. It'll be a couple years in developing to really see the whole thing to come to fruition. But we're having visions of the same thing with having an ag science program. I've shared some ideas with a lot of schools that currently have ag programs, FFA, et cetera. I'll use Perrydale as an example because obviously I'm from there and I know the people there quite well. Other areas, people in the area are actually lacking. That's one of the things I really kind of noticed right away. The closest FFA chapter to us is Junction City and Lebanon. So I really see this as an opportunity to not only go after a program that I think fits magnificently with our kids, but as an opportunity to create our own identity, in what's becoming really competitive business out there to attract and retain high quality kids and families and staff members. Philomath, Waldport, Monroe, they don't have what I'm pushing for. And see it as an opportunity to really, if we really get the right person in and be very deliberate and very intelligent about our decisions with this and provide the support it's going to require, I see an opportunity to really, manufacture, whether it's beginning now as an extension down into our elementary with 4-H opportunities, building up through our middle school, ultimately with a high school FFA program, the leadership opportunities to come within such a program. Now extending over, kind of integrating with the forestry program of study Mr. Crow has put together. I see an opportunity for, I mean, it's just awesome, to be frank. It's almost a little overwhelming thinking about the possibilities. And I've talked to Mr. Crow about this, that we're going to really, build one step at a time. And as we find that ag teacher that I'm out there searching for, same thing. We'll look at, having foundational pieces in place immediately, get our FFA program up and going. And obviously we're all kind of in the waiting game of that whole little, new building out back, and see if we can't get that thing put together and really give ourselves a chance to flourish. So that's really the crux of it. Obviously I was very sensitive to staff that here we are, I'm posting positions to hire at the time of cuts. It obviously is kind of a mixed message, but the positions we're posting for are within our budget and are currently, they're in existence outside of me changing the FTE usage of what was Joe Harris and is now going to be an ag teacher. So it's obviously tough times and exciting times at the same time. So we're balancing quite a bit there, but these are the things that we're keeping in mind as we're, again, analyzing, our programs, our daily bell schedule, our calendar, our discipline matrix, our graduation requirements. On and on and on. We were kind of taking a look at everything we're doing and kind of pushing all in this direction. This is, in my mind, the way to go to provide, programs that reflect the community values the way they do, to maximize what's hopefully going to be, the bond coming to fruition and providing the buildings that, we set out to get, and just providing as well-rounded experience as we can. I've talked to several, alumni that FFA was back in the day, an ag program was back in the day. And they've been really excited at that notion of it possibly coming back. So I'll take any questions if anybody has one. There's certainly even, and I would offer ahead of time on the drive home tonight or sometime tomorrow, something's going to click and someone's going to, hey, wait a minute, what about this? Feel free to email me. I'm certainly open for everybody's question.
So
Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Gallagher just put on the board that the goal is to have one teacher K-6 as well. Is that there's no discussion of split classes at this point?
Well, that is going to be enrollment decisions. Depending
Okay.
on where we're at. We do, admittedly, we have a couple of classes in our elementary that are flirting with that line. And
Okay.
now, to be fair, we've also had a hold on, bringing in new students, why a lot of this business with the state got sorted out. So I started going through those emails and contacts actually this morning, and I'll be reaching out to some of those families. Kind of a weird time of the year to invite families, hey, you want to enroll with 5 weeks to go? It's a tough time, but I will be extending that to those who have made inquiries. I would put that number, because some of them have siblings that, the parents have talked about. I'm going to say 15 kids off the top of my head that the families have extensive interest about coming to LC. So, and to be frank, what I'm talking about here with the ag and the forestry, this is the sort of thing we would, in my mind, be incredibly foolish not to get very creative and aggressive with advertising, getting it out there about what we're doing and where we're going. It's unique, it's a niche. It's certainly something that's going to attract high quality, high character, high work ethic kids to something that no one else around us has. So I would just definitely implore us as a district to get aggressive and creative on social media, et cetera, to make sure people know what we're doing.
Thank you.
And as far, and I'm sorry, and about the sixth grade classroom, I right now, we just have a pool that we have open for application as we still sort through this, RIF business. That it can get complicated with bumping rights, et cetera. So I have not done anything with that other than begin to get applications.
So I have a two-part question, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am.
So one of them is, what is your backup plan if you don't find that ag teacher slash because of the RIF program causing, or the RIF process causing a little bit of stress for the teachers. What is your backup plan for that?
Well, I would tell you, I've already got 2 applications and I feel very good about the people who are already in the mix. So we've had this open for a week and a half. And we have a couple of applications already. I'd like to let this flush out before I consider plan B.
Another thing that you
Okay.
mentioned, Eric, is reaching out to those families that want to come here, but only with
Right.
5 weeks remaining. And
Yep.
It's important for the budget committee to know that as of a couple days ago, our learn at home population finally is now less than the brick and mortar, which allows us to go ahead and do this, to open it back up.
Oh, good.
So
Okay.
that's why he's reaching out, and because we know there's been a steady decline since we had to freeze that. And so we didn't trigger complaints and things like that with our plan with ODE. And so now that we're less, we can open it back up and say, come on, come all. If you want to come here for the last 5 weeks, why not? Yes, ma'am.
Question, 2 questions. One is, and I could be wrong because I don't actually have kids in the school, but I always, so when you say K through 6 and then 7 through 12, I thought that middle school was 6th, 7th, and 8th. So is now our
Right.
middle school
Right.
only going to be 7th and 8th?
No, so the way, because the nature of our building kind of dictates that a little bit. We have our primary, which is our K3, right there in the main hallways, outside the main office. We have our intermediate, which is our 4, 5, 6 on the metal wing. And then obviously our 7 and 8. Now, I guess I should explain a little bit further as well. We'll be able to redo some room assignments to where our core academics will all be in the main high school hallway together, 7 through 12, because they'll have literally one math teacher, 1 language arts teacher, et cetera. So we're hoping to be able to also make it a little safer environment, where kids not having to cross parking lots. And obviously then there's the fencing thing, a whole nother topic for another time. And we choose to use 6th grade as kind of that's that integration time where they start to, the way I scheduled them, they have the opportunity to start to, come out of the traditional self-contained classroom. So as an example, like this year, and I've already conferred with our new superintendent about her thoughts on this for the future, and she supports what we're doing. Our 6th graders and 7th and 8th graders have PE and health together, and one of the groups goes to health for 2 weeks, while the other 2 have PE, et cetera, and they kind of rotate through. It's a good way to integrate the 6th graders with some of the existing middle school students. And then they also share an elective period where then we'll take 6th, 7th, 8th grade kiddos, and they all have electives the same period. And it's really three classes divvied up among the multitude of electives. So, they get out of their traditional classroom 2 periods a day and start to integrate with the classes above them.
So,
It's a slow roll moving uphill.
So I guess my second part, my other part is I wanted to ask you about art, but according to this is, are 6th graders going to be, I don't think the answer is yes, but are they going to be in the same class as a high schooler?
No, none of
Okay,
the
good.
middle schoolers will not have,
Okay.
their, now, let me take them back. For the most part, middle school kids, which I will say right now, 7th and 8th graders for this
Yeah,
discussion,
that's,
will not be in there with juniors and seniors outside of, opportunities like when we were offering band, right? We might have had a 7th grade, trumpet player with a junior drummer, very niche things. For the most part, no, 6, 7, 8 will have electives together. And, then 9 through 12 will have their electives together.
and how about art?
Art is part of our plan. One of the shifting duties that I've talked to Sean about is potentially me taking on. We have, like in our budget, we have a half-time counseling position. It looks like it's going to be me. It's actually me taking on the counseling aspect of that, which, I've had pretty extensive experience with first couple of years here. Anyway, we were fortunate to get Haley Rose, but as her family grows, she's already resigned that position. So me taking on that duty is gonna save us some money to be able to hopefully, hopefully afford to be able to keep an art teacher in some capacity.
Art, if I might add, is one of the most common requests I've heard from the community since I've been here.
Mhm.
Correct.
Yeah.
And our student body.
And the student body.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's a no-brainer. We currently are working on the staffing part of this. And there's also some SIA dollars that are attached to this also. That's the
Right.
student investment account. So,
And with that, it'll be part of the forecasting sheets that over the next few weeks, Haley and I will get out to our next year's middle school and high school students, looking for, once I have an ag teacher hired and we have a list of courses that we'll be offering through there, we'll be forecasting for middle school electives, high school electives, including a multitude of opportunities. And what we're hoping is, painting, drawing, sculptures, graphic design, et cetera. So we're hoping to, like I mentioned earlier, I'm a big believer in having the 4A's, and arts and activities need to be on that same foundational piece as athletics and academics. So
Thank
it's
you.
Yep.
Does anyone else have?
I do.
questions?
I have a question, Eric. So are you
Yes.
including music in art, or is that a separate deal? Is that something that's gonna?
No, so right now we do not have outside of Mary O'Brien, who does a little bit of music with our elementary students. We do not have music in the works. It is something that is, we're trying to get to one step at a time. I'm trying to tackle also figuring out a way to get foreign language capacity in our building. So we have a multitude of things we're trying to bring in. Really, I'm gonna probably just capitalize. If we hire the right person, who happens to also, by the way, have a great background in music, there we go. At this time, focus on more of the traditional art, as far as the opportunities and music waiting in the wings.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Eric, could you talk a little bit about your master schedule development with going to a 7-period day?
Yeah,
How that's working and how that translates into what we're looking at in terms of. our
well, with the financial predicament we're in, I think I said to Sean, look, I understand what's happening. We're gonna have to get very efficient. We got to get lean and mean. And we're gonna have to make sure that we capitalize and really be optimal with our scheduling to be able to provide opportunity. This is where we went through, we had a staff member resign, move on from us, Ms. Joy Jordan, that we chose to through attrition, soak that position up to bring some balance into our budget. With that, and then what happened with Mr. Harris, we really started looking then at the 6-period day has its like every schedule has its pros and cons. So we made the decision after analyzing about every schedule under the sun that returning to a traditional 7-period day would in fact allow us to offer a few more electives. The cons being then teachers have a few more preps, and it's a little bit less time in your core classes as is, and you have an extra transition time for behavior issues, et cetera. But the trade-off is we're going to be able to meet the needs of our students across those, even though we will shorter than we have been for across the 6-12. So the 7-period day, breaking it down right now, we're a 6-period day at 63 minutes per class. Will be a 7-period day at 54. We will still meet state requirements for seat time and graduation requirements, et cetera. So we've kind of looked at that. In fact, I had Tim France run the numbers the other day, just because he's a numbers guy, and he just double, triple check me, make sure we got everything where we need it to be. And then really the focus within our core classes, and I've spent time with Mr. Lynch, Mr. Roberts, and as it's going to be now, Catherine Ellis as our language arts instructor. And then math, obviously, is a position we're looking to fill. So we've had these discussions about really running the gamut, 7 through 12, and taking ownership of that. It's
So
it's a tough deal, but I think we're setting up nicely, all things considered.
So how are we managing like advanced math and science courses?
Right, right.
If math, language arts and science are teaching 7 through 12?
Okay, so math is going to have, well, that'll be one full-time job with 7th, 8th, algebra, geometry, applied math, and algebra 2. As is currently constructed, it's no different than what we were set up now. Anything above that at the pre-calc or calc level, whether it's math 95 or math 111, 112, we would have to take advantage of LBCC to provide that. For Mr. Lynch, because science, the way science is set up, the same thing, he'd have 7, 8, and then we do a yearly, we kind of flip-flop it, 1 year physical science, 1 year biology. And then he has a couple different, what we call the third year, it's part of the wall to graduation. That was always a problem. Third year of math, third year of science for a lot of students that struggle. Trying to get that third credit is always a challenge. So Mr. Lynch and I went back to the drawing board about, kind of changing the dynamics of those courses. He will still have 1 period in there to offer. He's going back through Willamette Promise, and I believe it's going to be Biology 101. We offered that 2 years ago, and we'll have that on a rotation of biology and chemistry and the environment. So we'll have Willamette Promise, in-house dual credit courses every year in science, in addition to that third year class, and then the traditionals of biology 1 year, physical science next, and then his 7, 8 schedule. Mr. Roberts, well, same thing. We'll have 7, 8, and then he'll flip-flop world history and US history. Same thing we do with biology and physical science. He will also then civics, and then he'll have 1 elective period, which we're using for video productions. Our hope is that at some point we'll even actually be able to develop a program of study for that, and look at Perkins funds, et cetera. That's one of the things I'll be putting to the incoming superintendent about how we maximize that opportunity. But it's a pretty cool elective that we have, and kids kind of get into it. And we hope to put more resources into that. And then with the language arts, that's going to be the most traditional one, between our 7, 8, and then our standard 9, 10 English, and vocational 1, vocational 2, and then 11, 12. The opportunities for in-house dual credit as is will not be there. We will, though, for the kids that are more advanced and on a 4-year pathway, we'll forego a traditional, say, 11, 12 English, and let them take maybe writing 121 or whatever it is, the course that meets their needs, LBCC. So we're still going to rely on LBCC for that top tier opportunities, and with the we only have so many periods available to us. So we're going to get extremely fundamental and have a great foundation. Thankfully, we do have LBCC, and we have, I think, enough things in-house that we can provide a high quality education for, a great, honestly, we're going to meet a lot of our students, the multitude of our kids going to meet their needs. We, right now we're averaging about 2 kids a year that are 4-year bound. Now, I would say a graduating class of 15, it would be tough for me to continually justify offering, AP or dual credit courses for 4 kids. So, in these times, I got to focus on the foundations and still provide opportunity for the high flyers.
For sure. And this isn't a new problem, right? This
Sure.
problem has
No.
been-
Yeah.
This is, forever. So
Yeah.
I don't really know what Willamette Promise is, but so I'm just thinking of like physics and chemistry. Do we not have that in-house? That's something that they do online?
Right.
Chemistry
So
online?
Willamette
seems
Promise. I'm sorry.
Odd. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I'm cutting out a little bit here. Willamette Promise is a collaboration with Western Oregon University and Oregon Institute of Technology and Chemeketa. It's kind of a little consortium that they take in, in-house teachers from across, it's up and down the Willamette Valley, primarily through the central part here. And I'll say, McMinnville area, maybe a little bit north to Sherwood, down through our area. So it's an opportunity for experienced and high quality high school teachers to be able to meet with their groups, college professors that guide the material and offer courses that happen in our classrooms for college credit. And it's extremely cheap. I want to say it's like $25 for the class. I mean, it's crazy cheap. And so this happens, this happens all over the Willamette Valley, and the small schools, it does create some issues for us on a 4-day week, because at times some of the things they do maybe happen on Fridays. Well, we're not in school on Fridays. How are students supposed to do that? So we've had some challenges with that, but we're trying to work through that, because there are other small schools like us that having the same thing. So chemistry and physics for Alsea High School the last few years has had extremely low numbers. I'll give you an example. I put that on the same thing. I sent Mr. Lynch to an AP conference the summer before. And when we started off the course,
Eric, describe AP really quick so they know.
advanced placement. I'm sorry, too many. Yeah, everything in education is acronyms, guys. I'm sorry. It's EduSpeak. It's crazy. Advanced placement courses are some of the top tier courses that kids can take, that at the summation of the course, they usually would take an AP, an advanced placement test. And if you pass that with, it's usually a 5-point scoring scale. If you pass that with a 3 or above, depending on which college you apply to, you could receive somewhere between, usually 4 to 5, 8 credits, per course and stuff. So, but it's more of it's not just about passing the test. AP courses are about academic culture, creating strong study habits, creating a lot of grit among students, because there's nothing easy about those. So I thought we were ready, to be frank, and we start off this year early with we had 13 kids signed up. Could not have been happier. And a week and a half later, we had 4. And I could not justify, having a full-time teacher in a core area teach 4 kids. So we've ran into that exact same problem with chemistry and physics. Great frustration for Mr. Lynch, that we just have not had a multitude of kids willing to put in the work for the higher academia. Like I said, some of these are 4-year requirements, or entrance, as requirements to a 4-year university. And we just right now don't have the numbers for that. Again, we're looking about an average of 1 to 2 kids a year that are 4-year bound. So it's been having some difficult choices. So with the Willamette Promise courses, though, that Mr. Lynch is subscribing to, again, 2 years ago, we ran Biology 101 and 102. Also ran a course through Willamette Promise called Chemistry and the Environment. And that was well received. We had a pretty good turnout for that. So we're hoping to still keep that rotation in place, so we have a higher academic elective available to us that's in-house and not through LBCC or some other online vendor. So it's a first foot in the pool on that, but not where we want to ultimately end up.
So Eric, is Willamette Promise that program where they were coming in after hours to do their science labs, like on Friday or Saturday?
Yeah, sometimes they have to come in different times. Sometimes I had to coincide with, the Zoom meetings that were happening with other, with other instructors, say from Western Oregon or Chemeketa, OIT, et cetera. So it was not always easy to connect. Several of our kids made it really work. And I can speak from experience as a parent. My own son went through that, and with Mr. Lynch, and did a number of kids, and they had a really good experience. It just tough to navigate sometimes. So we're putting that on a rotation where we do that, every other year. We'll kind of rotate the bio 101, 102 series, as well as the chemistry and the environment. So as the kids change, Mr. Lynch and I, kind of have that agreement that 3rd year that I talked about earlier, kind of going to be sculpted to fit the needs of our kids. I've only got 1 or 2 kids that need that 3rd year of science to try and graduate. Well, then that seems like a pretty good opportunity to just take that online, and we can offer another high level elective, or vice versa. If I only have 2 kids that are really amped up for physics, let's say, or, because that means I have a multitude of kids that need that 3rd year. Well, then we'll go that path. So we've got a built-in mechanism to meet the needs of the kids.
Go ahead and ask your question in the microphone.
So how do you plan in the budget for paying for the LBCC? And
That is all actually high school success grant. We have that in there.
Yeah, that's my answer right there.
And the Willamette Promise is also an LBL ESD sponsored program. They're kind of a go-between, and it's a tier 2. It's called a tier 2 expense for us. So we just met with the ESD just the other day. Krista, our new superintendent, was there, as well as other key staff on both ends, and we reviewed the tier 2 plan, which is monies that are allocated to us through the state school fund. But then we can choose a smorgasbord of programs, and one of them is the Willamette Promise.
Thank you, Eric. Anybody else have questions?
Yeah, I have one.
I had one too. Oh, go ahead.
I've been following a lot of the programs that are out there now with agricultural programs and incorporating the STEM. And so when you were talking about needing just as far as science, technology and
Sure.
math, could we currently have teachers in each one of those elements. Could you incorporate them into the ag program to do some of the things relative to that? I know just enough to be dangerous on this, but I know
Right.
there's a lot of that going on.
Sure. So as with many things, it's really going to depend on what I'm hoping is a superstar professional we attract to ALC and, get them in our midst and, figure out what are their strengths and where are their passions and, how do those align with the needs of our kids and then turn them loose. In fact, I'll even go one further. Instead of STEM, I prefer STEAM, adding that arts component to that.
I've got it
And
here.
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
and so there's, as with anything, if we have someone who comes in and their gift happens to be, welding and horticulture, well, okay, we'll let's run with that and build upon, those particular expertise. And how can we integrate that? I'm going to be looking for a lot of things that year one of really building the foundation. And even though Mr. Crow has been here, we're really kind of starting over with that forestry program. And really now we've solidified his specific program of study. So we're looking for a strong foundation in year one for ag and forestry. And then we'll certainly look for some of those opportunities to potentially even cross over. Is there an opportunity for ag and science to do a class together? Is there an
Right,
opportunity for
right.
math and forestry? Those are things we look at. The other piece of this is, I'm going to be demanding, and Crow knows this because we've already met. And when I hire an ag teacher, it'll be the same thing, but I'll be demanding that our middle school electives are really reflected, kind of what we call a wheel, that little taste of everything. If there's some, let's say ag as an example, there might be a little horticulture, a little bit of, whether it's learning to weld or intro to welding, whether it's a little bit of animal science or whatever. We give our middle school kids a little taste of a lot of the opportunities. And the same thing we said for forestry, whether it's some specific pieces of natural resources and forestry, maybe for a quarter, and then they all, go into a little bit of construction, et cetera. So we're really gonna be looking to have this trickle down, generating interest all the way down into our middle school. And then really as an extension to really maximize CTE pathways and potential Perkins funds in the future, it's best practice to really even extend that down into your intermediate school, which is, basically grade is kind of the benchmark of that. So long-term plan, we want to figure out a way to, again, trickle that down into our intermediates. So there's a lot of things to be done once the foundation is built. So the STEAM opportunities could be very exciting, and absolutely, I think we'd be foolish to not examine every opportunity, but it's going to really start with the individual we hire for this ag program. And then first things first.
One of the seeds I've been trying to plant, and I know Eric, you bought into this also, is that within an ag program, you can create an ag science program
Yes.
Correct.
where you integrate the two, and a student taking an ag science course gets credit for electives and science.
Yes.
Because if you think about ag, think about the amount of science there's involved there. So it's a little tricky, but it's possible. And I've done it in other ag programs, and it's a great way to incorporate. And so you asked the question about integrating other teachers. Oh, absolutely. In ag, forestry,
Yeah. I
art,
was thinking
you got
and-
math, you got science. You can
Right.
even talk about language arts and communication and history. And oh my goodness, it's like it's the smorgasbord of all these core academics coming together.
Well, and that's an
Money
extension
out
of,
there for that.
Sean,
And
if
there's
you
money for that. Yes. What's that, Eric?
So I remember a few weeks ago when I was out touring some other schools, just kind of seeing some of the ideas. I'll use Fall City as an example. They actually have exactly that sort of opportunity to where they're through their shot program and some specific pieces of their shot program, they're offering math credit. And these are the sort of
Yes.
opportunities that, if done right, can be very exciting and really get those sparks of interest. And, for some of the kids, it just, we all know that someone struggles with math, right? And for some of those kids, that can be a great turnoff. And we can figure out a way to integrate some of those disciplines. We will really, I know Toledo had previously done that. Art had worked extensively with their CTE teacher over there. We talked about that some. So there are some models out there that we're looking to, like everything else in education, look to steal from. So once our pieces are all in play, we're going back to that drawing. So
One of the
pretty
best-
exciting, but
One of the best
lot to
ways
do.
to get kids turned on to core academic education is in applied.
Right. But
Show 'em
why
how
am I
it's
learning
applied.
this?
Why am I
Right.
learning the Pythagorean theorem? How could I use the Pythagorean theorem? All those different sorts of things. Kids really, they like that tactile learning. And if I was to really summarize my observations of the students that we have here in the community we live in, it's very tactile oriented, very applied oriented. And I know we may not have a huge plethora of students going into your 4-year track, but I think the board saw a presentation a couple months ago that talks about those CTE tracks are just as
Correct.
powerful in terms of careers.
Absolutely.
And that's the applied sense. And so that's why we're looking at STEAM related type programs. That's why we're pushing for an ag science or an ag program or forestry or art, because we know that that's what attracts kids, especially when you're dealing with a charter school and you want to attract kids to come to ALC. My goodness, as Eric was saying, if we get an ag program started here, watch, they will come. The kids will come. They want to see FFA. They want to see 4-H. They want to see art. They want to see all these different types of programs, and it's all tied into core academics.
So you guys kind of keep dancing around my question. Do you guys have a plan to start helping these kids go towards the 4-year plan? So I know that COVID has hurt the education
Mhm,
in our kids quite a bit.
mhm.
And I know that kind of took the level of education down a bit. Is there a plan to maybe get them back up on that track? Because I remember, just say Noah, for instance, that class, they were very highly educated, and a lot of them actually were taking associate's degrees when they graduated. And that was what, the year before COVID or 2 years before COVID? And so is there a plan to get those kids back on track?
Eric, you want to start?
Well, again, the students and their families will on their own kind of dictate the specifics of what they want their future to look like. We can only provide the doors, right? And so now opportunities so I'll use an example. Haley, I had Haley meet with I believe it went all the way down through the 7th graders, talking about higher level coursework that would be available to them, whether it's not just advanced math, maybe they happen to be gifted early on, but as they hit high school, what the different tracks would look like. If they were really thinking about college, if they were thinking about a 4-year, a 2-year, trade schools, whatever. So, I really feel strong that, we're going to continue to push kids to obviously to challenge themselves in the classroom. But, my job is not to tell them what to do with their lives. My job is to make sure when they cross that stage, they've got more than 1 or 2 doors open to them. And I want to make sure that our kids are fully prepared for, you want to go to 4-year college? Great, we've got you prepared. You want to head to the military? Awesome, you're ready to go. you're going straight to the workforce, you're well-rounded and capable. So, that's really the core of what we're continually trying to, push with with all the kids is, we want best performance possible in our classroom. As a reflective, like when I'm talking about, like right now, we're averaging 1 or 2 kids per class that are heading off to a 4-year. I think it's important to remember we had an explosion of kids that came into our school, during the time of COVID. Obviously, we're very aware that numbers skyrocketed. It's important to remember that, there's 2 groups of parents that tend to move faster than others. And parents with students on an IEP or students that they're struggling and they're maybe bouncing in and out of alternative schools, et cetera. So our numbers jumped up significantly, but we had a lot of kids come in with some academic struggles or some that were just flat way off track to graduate. So it's been an uphill climb with a significant portion of our student body. And we've had some tremendous successes. And I'm using Mr. Frick as an example, and a couple of the kids he's got graduating in the next couple of classes are just, poster children for success of what a small school can do when we get to wrap our arms around them and really support them the way they need. So, pushing the 4-year is just like everything else. I don't want to ever come across as, well, 4-year is the only true pathway. No, there's a lot of pathways to success, and I want the kids to embrace whatever that is and go with it with their full gusto. It's not for me to dictate what success looks like for them. So I want the kid that's going straight to the workforce to feel every bit as good about his education as the one who is, heading to Willamette. So.
If I was to answer your question directly, I think we and to summarize kind of what Eric is talking about, career counseling is a huge component that needs to be restored, and it needs to start at the 5th grade level. And that's directly tied to some of these grants that we've been talking about, under the Aligning for Student Success and the CTE components. Is every year a student needs to be completing their career plan, and we all know it's going to change. 1 year they might want to be a firefighter, the next year it's a policeman or something of that nature. But then it starts to evolve as they get older in terms of, okay, what kind of coursework are you taking right now? You say you want to be a medical doctor? Okay, let's talk about what that's going to look like. And you don't want to start that conversation when they're a junior in high school. You want to start
Right.
when they're in middle school,
Well-
because a lot of the decisions they make in middle school can influence their high school.
So I guess re-engage is the word that I was kind of looking for.
Yes,
How are we re-engaging these kids back into their ideas, not just a 4-year? I get that not
Right.
everybody's for that, but how do we re-engage these kids and getting them back into a career, whether it's being a chef or being
Yeah.
a policeman or being a firefighter or being a bookkeeper? Because I know a lot of the kids have fallen off those wagons.
mhm,
And
Yep.
so
Yep.
re-engaging is the word I guess I'm looking for.
yeah. Eric, you want to talk about some of the work that Haley has done this year in terms
Well,
of engaging kids?
Yeah, I mean, I can't put a price on the value of what the work Haley has done. Obviously the connection to students is literally everything, right? Giving the kids a reason to believe, whether it's supports on, building the self-esteem, making them believe in their academic abilities, helping them overcome challenges at home or in society, whatever. You can't really put a price on the value of that, because the bottom line is I can't educate someone who's not there. And we've got to give kids reason to want to be there. And the charm and the beauty of the small schools is the personal relationships. And we've got a lot of crazy cool characters in our classrooms as teacher leaders, and they're wonderful people and they can do wonderful things if the kids are there. Now, a charming personality or some charisma is only going to go so far. Part of exactly what we're talking about is given maybe that more spark of passion, spark of interest sort of coursework that's maybe more reflective on who our kids are. That's specifically why I'm pushing for the forestry ag science pathway. That this, in my opinion, with a lot of consideration with who our kiddos are, this fits the bill for a lot of our young men and women. And I stress men and women, that are some of our girls that are our boys are just, they're starving for that something else. And we've been, yeah, we're small schools, we're always a little bit limited. And even though we're losing a tremendous, and actually both the Harrises, there's kind of a silver lining opportunity here to reinvent ourselves. It's more reflective of really the area at large, not just LC. I mean, our surrounding areas, I think, subscribe to a lot of the same, blue collar, hands, like Sean said, tactile, hands-on, learn by doing. And we're going to be able to provide something that, Philomath and Monroe and Walport, eat your heart out. So I'm really looking forward to pushing forward with this.
Right, any more questions? All right, thank you so much, Eric.
And again, if anybody thinks of one later, driving home tomorrow, whatever, just email me. I'm more than happy to get back to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
You bet.
Okay. Oh, PowerPoint, there we go. Thank you.
While we're transitioning, I had an idea that I posted to, to Bart the other day.
Oop.
We're cutting a bunch of
Yeah.
aid positions. I think we should really encourage the involvement of student aides again. It's an
Completely agree.
amazing opportunity for the kids.
That
and
is a
can really
career.
assist the
Yes,
teachers.
yes, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you.
Especially for the
Yeah.
seniors that have to do the job shadow.
I think Laura and I were
Yeah.
talking about that a couple weeks ago when we had the, board meet- not this meeting, but the budget meeting, and parents too.
Well, and when you have
Mhm.
behavior issues in a classroom, a lot of times those students don't necessarily respond to the adult in the room the greatest. They want to push that authority.
Mhm,
But when there's an older student,
mhm.
it tends to bring them down a notch to be cool, fit in with that cool high school kid.
Mhm.
So I just think it would be very beneficial and inexpensive labor,
Mhm. No,
with amazing
great.
opportunities for
Amazing
those
opportunity.
students.
Absolutely.
So we'll go ahead and start. The second slide is kind of what we're going to go over, and it was the educational plan, and then some budget questions. And I have I got all the emails that I have, and I've tried to answer as much as I possibly can. So we'll go through here first, and I just wanted to answer most of them. Oops, the integrated grants budget. It's on the ALC district website, and the next slide actually shows on the PowerPoint how to get there, if you didn't know how to get there, so you can all see that. Just go back to the. Anyway, there's a link there that actually has in this presentation that Sean clicked on to show the actual budget that we had to submit for the integrated grants. It incorporates
There
4
it is.
different grants. Just the second slide to that, it actually shows you how to get there. Of course, district office aligned for student success, and then at the bottom of there, it says integrated planning budget right down there on the left-hand side, second one to the bottom. Yeah. So those budgets were submitted, and they are kind of revamped, updated every year because things can change. But we if you go back to the slide and go to the integrated budget link that
This one?
we put enough in here to actually let me go off the smaller, or make it a little smaller, please.
Smaller?
So the SIA grant is on the left right-hand side, SIA activity, student investment account activity budget. Right now, they're proposed at $755,000. That's what they have told us this year, and that's what we based our budget on for next year. Grants can change, and it changes a little bit with enrollments. You also can see high school success is about a 158. I'll go down the SIA for 755. they said to put items in here that were, of course, per community engagement. We went through the whole process. But we wanted to put as much in here that in case something didn't happen, then we had other opportunities to utilize it. If you don't have it on there, then you have to go out and see if you can get community engagement and go through the whole process again. So, of course, there's a little bit of indirect, but not very much. Your guidance counselor is on there, a portion of the guidance counselor, excuse me, CTE program teacher. We have some certified RTI specialists. We have some art teacher classes that we have. A family liaison is on there. We have some CTE course materials, and it's all on this right-hand side, of course. Some reading and math intervention curriculum for ELA. And then professional development to actually learn how to use our curriculum. And any other professional development that goes along with if it's a well-rounded education courses I have there. After school programs like after school programs for students. So that would be a little bit of wages and have it in the arts, fine arts, case there's, I think we were thinking of pottery in this case, or any other fine art that they, admin besides. CTE culinary teacher, some art, reduced class size for EAs in there, a little bit in there. And then that's where we have our 4 teachers that were kind of designated to the learn at home, a little bit there. So that kind of wraps up our 755,000. It gives us a lot of, gives us everything kind of that we got from a community engagement. And it makes it so there, we can have it in case something falls through, like, let's say we can't hire a teacher. Well, what are we going to use that money for? Then this is kind of answering one of the questions. Then we can use it for something else.
So a lot of that was determined by the contents of what I'm showing you here.
Mhm.
Remember, you go to the district office and you go to a line for student success and you end up on this page, and all of that work is captured in these documents here. And so that's the source of how we ended up developing the budget that she just showed you just for the SIA grant.
So my question is, why don't we have indirect on there?
Oh, we have a little bit, but there is a tiny bit of indirect $1,000 to the SIA, but it's really supporting the students rather than the indirect. It's if you have to use it, then that I can see it, but it's mostly to support the students.
So indirect,
Mhm.
and this is part of the questions.
Uh-huh.
Indirect is calculated, and you have an indirect rate, is to cover administration overhead.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And then you cost it out to all the programs. and
Yeah.
Grants.
so we
How
don't.
come we're not doing that?
So we don't have so this does answer one of your questions. We don't have a federal rate of indirect. We haven't pursued that yet.
You can
with
have a
this
state
district.
rate though.
So yes, and they said I think it's 5% to what we actually spend. So I'm allocating $1,000 and the rest is going towards programs. If they happen to come in a little short, and it will be in that 5% range, that can be the leftovers for indirect.
So you charge all the administrative overhead to the programs?
Administrators like your principals and stuff. those are
Everything,
general
operation
fund.
overhead.
Yeah,
You charge it to programs?
we charge it to Office of the Principals, General Fund. For
Which is,
principal.
which is funding that comes from grants and
No.
allocations and appropriations?
No, and
I just
admin-
don't know why we don't charge out administrative overhead. on an
Well, because
allocation.
we had decided it was better off with a little bit there as an allocation, but it's better off to go to serve the students. Rather than.
What about for transportation, like with we do the Kings Valley, do we charge them an indirect?
Yeah, theirs is actually indirect in the fact that I charge them a little bit of the transportation manager's salary and wages.
Is that
it's
something
indirect.
we need to take a look at?
What?
That process,
Indirect.
getting an official indirect rate.
We do not have a federal indirect rate. So that is a process that we need to go through.
Yeah, we need to go through that.
Definitely.
Yes. I think it's, to answer your question a little bit better, Naomi. I think it comes down to what is the purpose of a school district budget to begin with? And the purpose is to serve the students.
Right,
And we're a service industry. We're not a money-making industry.
right.
And so, the indirect rates that you're used to, you're used to seeing, as a grant writer, very common, like 5% or something, of that, 10%, whatever, those sorts of things. We're trying to maximize our dollars here to go to the best value for the kids.
Well,
They're-
I'm surprised that the administration overhead costs are even allowable to be passed directly to the programs. Because it's not, how do you go through that?
Depends on the grant.
Well, on all the state ones,
Yeah.
because that's primarily what we have. But how is it equitable? How is it equitably allocated across all of the resources that you have?
Mhm.
Is it like FTE stuff?
So like, I think she's asking, a lot of times we have FTE that's, you have a 1.0 person sitting here, but we put 0.25 over here, 0.5 over here, and 0.75 or whatever it is.
So you
know.
allocate them.
Yes, of course, like special ed.
Yeah.
If, I'll use Krista as a great example. She's gonna be our new superintendent. She's also gonna be the sped director. So
Okay.
part of her salary,
Got that, but the balance of it, the admin portion of it, how does it get allocated properly to all of the programs so they all pay their fair share?
It's actually, that indirect is, it's not getting allocated. It's getting in the general fund as if you have to have a principal to operate the school. This indirect is
I know that's-
small amount.
that's-
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
small
that's just-
amount and we don't have a regular federal indirect rate.
Yeah.
We have to apply for that. But these grants were allocated out to serve best the student rather than the overhead project of it. If we happen to have $10,000 or $5,000 and it's under their 5%, that's when we actually have that line. And we say, okay, this $5,000, let's. put
But when you
indirect
have
in
an
there.
indirect rate and it's calculated and approved, it's a cap.
mhm,
So this is
So
way
you
under the
have to
cap.
live within your means administratively overhead against that cap.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah.
mm. You're looking for accountability in terms of administrative.
Accountability
Yes.
and a
Got it.
stopgap.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, we probably need to pursue something like that and take a look at that, but
Yeah,
I'm not so sure if that has anything to do in the Oregon budgeting man.
It does, there's an applicant, there's a process from Oregon, because I
Is there?
looked it up. It,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, but you have to have a principal no matter what, if you had no grants or whatever. So
Right,
To run the
but a
programs. as
portion of
general
that,
fund.
yeah.
So-
But you have a pool of administrative overhead.
Mhm.
And because you have a calculated indirect, each one of the programs get a portion of that equitably.
Yeah, if you had it, your indirect, you could actually have 2.5 on some of those federal grants. It's usually 2.5 rate, in some other schools. But that's why these high school success and SIA even allow an indirect, since we don't have one
Mhm.
applied for.
Mhm.
But yes, you are, so we could be gaining some back.
I just figured maybe if the reason why we didn't was somewhere along the way, you investigated and researched it and found that maybe it wasn't a logical move to go.
I haven't done any research on the indirect. I just came in and they didn't have an indirect, so I was like, that's one of the mini projects probably.
Yeah, I think it's something we need to look at, but for whatever reason, it hasn't been addressed.
Okay, it's pretty important
Yeah, I think so.
because you can capitalize on it with match and all that
right,
stuff.
right.
Plus it's accountability for the
accountability.
administration.
Correct.
I have a question about the 400,000 down for the learn at home teachers.
Yeah.
I know there was some discussion last meeting about those numbers seeming very, very high. So
That's
you're
with
saying,
benefits,
and I
actually.
understand, I'm talking enrollment numbers. The class sizes that with a goal seemed incredibly high to me anyway, and I think somebody else mentioned that the last meeting also. Out of those 400,000, if we do not add 2 teachers to each of those levels that is usable in other areas.
Yes, that's why we
Absolutely.
have so
Okay.
many facets. We wanted to make
I
sure
just
we,
wanted to confirm that because that's a huge chunk of that SIA
Yes,
grant.
yes.
So can you explain? So right there, it says it's on that line. So if we don't grow the program, how does that money get allocated? That 400,000?
it goes to something that we've listed there.
What do you mean?
It goes to any of those projects we've listed there because it's not saying that this 3,000 only can be used for that particular line. The
So we
SIA
could
grant does not
just
work like
modify
that. Correct. Some
Okay.
grant,
So do you guys have a backup plan? Do you know how you would distribute that?
that is our proposed plan that
yeah.
we are going with for this budget.
So it would be allocated throughout what's already been identified, because this has to
Okay.
be approved by the state.
Right.
And if there's
So-
anything that we want to apply that 400,000 to that's out of the scope, we would have to go back to the state to get it reapproved.
Okay, so you could say, you could, if you wanted to, you could put 400,000 to professional development. You
Yeah,
could.
that
Could.
was
I know
don't
you
think
wouldn't
that's
want to,
reasonable.
No.
but
Okay.
you
You
could
could.
and you wouldn't get in trouble.
It doesn't have to be proportional to the way it is.
No.
No, no,
Okay.
it doesn't.
No, but yeah,
And like I said, it doesn't mean that we're restricted to that. We're restricted just within the boundaries of the grant. And there's still flexibility there. This is what we've submitted to the state for approval. Hopefully they'll come back and approve it, and then we have to stay within these boundaries unless we come up with something else that, we had a change here, and we need to be taking this 400,000 and converting it over here, and we'll have to go back
Oh,
And
so you'll have
resubmit
to
it.
go back to,
to the ODE and get
okay,
that
so,
reapproved.
so say you come December of next year and you're not growing the program,
Mhm.
that's when you go back for approval?
We would have to take a look at how the allocation of these is going. Like, for instance, guidance counselor, you only have a 0.375 there. Maybe we pick up a 1.0. And now we have an opportunity to shift those dollars to fund 1.0 that counselor in the SIA grant.
But you'd have to submit it for approval in December.
No,
Not
no,
really,
because
no.
it's already on there.
yeah.
Right, since it's already on there, it's approved. If we're gonna add something
Oh,
to
something
that
different.
different,
Okay,
that's when we'd have to go back
Okay.
and get it reapproved.
And that's why I didn't max out the indirect. It's just there as a kind of a $1,000 placeholder. If we're lean on our budgeting of what we want to do with our budget, indirect is probably the least place we should put it, I think. So that's what we proposed to the state.
Mhm.
And then if you scroll up a little bit, the high school success grant is proposed at 158.
Mhm.
And then you can see what we have in the high school success grant. We have some also of the guidance counselor. We have some of the CT program of study forestry. That's very important that is the most important program of study for your high school success grant. We have some CTE programs supplies. We have expansion of the forestry CT program supplies and then field trips and so forth we have there. We have college and career field trips, like that, yeah, that explains itself. College courses, this is where I said we go through Lynn Benton Community College for advanced classes. And then very important also, some of these caveats, we have to make sure we actually apply to, which would be 8th grade on track. Personnel, 8th grade on track, supplies, materials, and field trips. So your 8th grade on track is very important for high school success, as well as your program of study. And ours. And we applied for that community college thing and got it, made sure it was in our program.
Is
Just
this
pay for
another
that.
one that needs approval or that you've gotten approval?
No, so
for?
this was the thing we had to do all 4 of these grants, SIA, high school success, EIIS, which is early intervention indicator. And then CSI and /TSI is another one they gave us 85,000 for the next year. And that's really where we're gonna stick in some EAs, classroom, and then
Curriculum
some
coordinator.
curriculum. And then we get very, very little in the early indicator. So that's usually for maybe a tech program that we use to indicate for early indication of stuff like that. So very
So
small.
all this is submitted to the state as a package. Because remember, I showed you that graph with the aligning for student success. It's all those 6 areas and the whole thing just went blink. And we've gotten some feedback and some further questions from ODE. And we're waiting the final approval on this. But this is also that movement towards our SIP plan, you know, and the development and the engagement. And but this is kind of the numbers game that we have to play with this in terms of best supporting our staff.
I have a question, a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
When we were looking at programs, possible new programs or expanding programs or capacity building or whatever, and we talked about, and you sent me that whole thing, the PDM, which shows the programs that are allowable.
Oh, that was your little book.
Was it
The budget.
PDM?
Oh.
P-band.
PBAM.
Well, the P-band.
P-band.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we want to look and find a program that qualifies. If if it matches under these, is that adequate enough? Or if
Well,
it's
the P-
something, if we can relate that program to this,
The PBAM has only to do with how we record our revenues and expenditures
Oh,
within the budget
I thought that
process.
was,
That's the
had to
PBAM.
do with
That's
programs.
regulated. That's
Developing-
regulated how you record.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
never
that-
mind.
But we are always, as a school district, interested in programs. I mean, money to support.
Okay,
but it
I
has-
misunderstood.
this is
I thought
separate.
that PDM was a list of where you couldn't, you could or you couldn't have programs. that were
Program
eligible.
budgeting manual or something. like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Budgeting and
that's a
accounting
budgeting
manual,
manual.
which
Okay.
is like the
Never mind.
accounting person's. book.
Guide.
Nightmare.
Guide.
This right- this is-
That's what it is.
The programming eligibility comes through this document I was showing you
Right,
earlier.
right.
And, you know, I don't think we need to take time to read it right now, but it's a great reference. And you kind of
Yes.
see of the high school success, what is eligible for that grant? What kind
Yes,
of program?
yes.
You know, so that's where you would find a lot
You
of
just don't
those.
want to wait 5 years to get that done.
Well, I know. It, because of how intensive and the complexity, it's kind of slowed the process down. But once again, it's kind of like that boat, that once you get them on plane, and get them going, but it's gonna take a little.
My middle name is Patience because I have none.
Okay,
Okay, so that is the SIA, and let's go back to the presentation. I was wanting
Yep.
to see kind of just the 4 main grants that well, 2 main grants, your SIA and your high school success, and how to utilize them. That was an answer to a question. And the next one is, oops, it's just, I wanted to, there was a question that came up about the 22-23 adopted budget on the website. So you can go ahead and click there if you want. It is on the website. And the comments, just go to the budget documents.
budget documents, so you're under financial reports. Where do they find financial reports? Under district
Under
office?
districts, and then.
Okay, so district office, same place as you go to Align for Student Success, you have financial reports. Which takes you here, and you got budget documents.
And so this lists out your old ones, your proposed and your adopted. And this is where a lot of the new documents I'm posting, trainings and so forth to do with this budget are there as well. The main question was, there was a difference, I think, between some end value actuals. And I just wanted to mention there was not on the adopted. The previous approved budget had some actuals, but that is not what you adopted.
Right.
So you're more or less approving, excuse me, the actual proposed idea. And when I looked back at some old versions of the 22-23 approved document before I reran some numbers and saw there was some mistakes happening on the actuals. So what is currently in this budget is actually what's in our system. Because I
Okay.
actually pulled it out via pivot table. And so it's just exported. So that was a question that came up. And if you have some direct exact places where you wanted to show me or a question on that. you can feel free.
No, I just wanted a general
General idea,
answer,
okay.
but to that, and like I said, I could be missing something, which I said in my email. If I am, please let me know. I know one thing I sent you that I found later, but on these pages, on all of the funds, so you got your 2021, 21, 22, and 22, 23. Now 22, 23, we're still in.
Mhm.
So we don't
Which is the.
have any actuals until
Correct.
July because those
Correct.
won't be there. And I get that. So with every single program we have, no, I mean, I'm sorry, with every single fund that we have across the board on this one, because like on expenditures, we've got all, we've got the functions and they go all down and they go to the expenditures. Two things. One thing is there a sheet where I can see, I don't necessarily want to see 1131, 1132. I want to see all the way across actuals for each thing and then the adopted 2023 and the proposed budget for us.
Okay, so I can show you, so let me,
That's the
that is
first
a
part.
little bit of answering to the questions. Let me go through the
Oh,
questions
thank you.
and see if I can answer some of them. And then
This
we
is
can go
what I'm
back to the ones you think you need some more clarification on. The piece of paper I'm passing out is actually, for the people online, it's actually just part of the 22-23's budget document, and it should be page 161 of the 22-23's old
Okay.
document. Ryan, it's old.
Old.
Old, old.
It's doing the same thing.
Right.
I was like, old, that one.
That
old.
one.
Yeah,
It's
The
page
adopted-
161 on the
adopted
old
budget.
item.
Okay, thank you for printing that though. That
But I
was,
printed it just in case.
okay, no,
So this is what I was requested. They wanted the resolution to adopt the budget for this 22-23 school year. That, of course, has been slightly modified with any resolution we have passed to the board.
great, okay.
So that's why it's
Nope,
not gonna
that's fine.
match perfectly.
So across as far as across the board, I just wanted to know if we had somewhere that were totals, but,
Okay, I'm getting there.
okay,
Okay, so I showed the adopted budget from the website. Back to the presentation, I just showed, the next slide down is just where you can go to find the aligned student success items.
but it's
Um,
not in here, what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Oh, okay,
The next presentation part is answer to a different person's question.
okay,
They were wanting the beginning fund balances rolled from what was ever presented in the audit. This is what I rolled January 1st after our audit went through. This is our beginning fund balances. The reds, of course, are the good. The darks are the bad, meaning if you came in red for the credit on a revenue, that's a good thing. It's a credit balance. And then if you came in a debit, which is the darks, that mean you have to kind of clean up the beginning fund balance somehow. So that's when you
Okay.
can see just exactly what our actuals came in through,
okay,
rolled
So what do
over.
you mean by cleaning up fund balance?
Like 191. That's our electronic connectivity fund
Right.
that the board heard about a while ago, but we cleaned it up. And then you have 299, we had 92,000 come through for food service. We're cleaning that up, and we cleaned it up with with some interfund transfers.
Oh,
the budget
okay, so
project.
you had to make physical transfers either out of. the
Yeah,
fund
and
balance
that's
or
come to
into
the
fund-
board.
That's
Yeah.
priority adjustment.
So those, it was requested, that was requesting to show the beginning fund balance
Yes.
roll from that.
July
and,
1st, right?
July
Yeah,
1st.
Yeah.
To come into this year.
Yeah.
And then we had, as an accounting and board, we've cleaned them up.
So the board knows what all of those adjustments were.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, especially, yeah. So some of them are, some of these negatives actually are because some grants were pulled down after the cutoff period. So then the revenue comes in, but the revenue actually comes in the new year and it offsets.
It wasn't deferred then. I got it.
It's been cleaned up for this new year.
So
Okay, the next presentation is on page 30, and this answers a question just of the
of the-
function.
this book?
of this one.
Of this current one.
in the current book,
And it was just a kind of a comment or answering a question about the fund. I mean, this is general fund, so function across, and you can actually see the function name. That is something I will clean up in the presentation of the approved and adopted to say function. What is the name of that function? It's very
Okay.
easy to attach there. I forgot it,
That's okay.
plain and simple.
Okay.
But it was summarized in this one, and it shows you that what 111 means and your actuals across. So you can see comparison of how our actuals went a little up 1.5 to 1.7, and now we're bringing them back down in just elementary education to 1.3. So you can kind of compare the years. Your adopted budget for 22-23 will actually be, that's your budget. And I'm anticipating those numbers to be lower than that.
The 12 million, you mean? On the
Yes.
bottom? Okay,
Yeah, that's an adopted budget.
right.
But it should come in lower since we're expecting a healthy
Do you
beginning
know
fund balance.
where you are right now, kind of in a preliminary?
It's presented to the board every month with.
Okay, that's, I
their
can get that
financials.
on the website.
And we're having a meeting in May.
Yes, okay, nope, thank you. My other part of my question, and for me, it's really important, and again, if I am not seeing it, but if you look at last year's budget, and this, and you can look at, I mean, you know what it looks like, you've seen it, but if you guys want to pass that around. So I understand that you're trying to summarize this in the general fund. I'm talking about the
Oh.
general fund.
Oh, yeah.
I understand you're trying to summarize that. But for me, I don't feel like I can make a conscious decision on what I'm doing if I don't know that under
Okay.
function 1132, yeah, you have 100 that's salaries, but there's sub objects under 100 that break out.
Yep. Okay, so this is how I proposed the budget in that structure. I said fund, function, and then the rolled up objects.
Mhm.
Objects. And you can see the details, of course, which you probably have gone through page 35 through 144, just in the rolled object, looking from year to year. So that is what's required. And you can always ask, what's this 30,000 made up of? And I can answer those details. I did my budget though, so it's easy to see from year to year in rolled format. That's how I did the budget. It's,
And 35 is resources,
yeah,
right?
well, 35 through 144.
For what,
So it
right, right,
breaks you-
right.
It breaks.
I totally get
out.
what this is. I
Yeah,
do.
okay.
I
So that's the
appreciate
detail
it. It's a
part of
lot of work, but what I'm saying is like for right now, for 1132, which is high school extracurricular, okay? On last year's, this says 100 salaries, 200 associated payroll costs. I can go to last year's and see, oh, associated payroll costs and 200 are employer PERS, employer contribution pickup, social security, workers' comp, family medical leave, and health insurance. In 100, I can see license salaries, classified salaries, administrators, and additional salary.
Yeah.
So, and I know those things are finer detail, but
Mhm.
I'm assuming that if we're picking through cuts and looking at all those things, that those things might be helpful to some people
Okay,
to see. Does
But-
everybody agree with me or not? Or do they think that's not necessary?
well, I did want to make one note.
Oh, sorry.
1132 is your athletic program mostly. And so that
Yeah.
was moved.
Yeah,
from
extracurricular. It
earlier.
just says extracurricular in the definition.
Well,
but
it's moved actually out as one of your transfers into a special revenue fund, so that's.
The 218,
The 218. So it's
right,
gonna
but
show
again, that's not
zero.
broken out. It's just athletics, $171,000. It's not broken out like,
Oh,
how much is coaching? How much is this? How much is that? How much is uniforms?
okay, it doesn't say uniforms and your supplies and your, how much referees are and such, but it was wages, of course, are all wages.
Right, under 100.
Under 100.
Yes.
And then your benefits are all your, if somebody has to do with PERS, if somebody has to do with all those. so-
I understand what you're saying, and I
And then your-
totally get that, and I saw that in
Mhm.
there with the numbers with the 218, because you broke
Yeah.
those out. I guess I'm used to looking at budgets that for the school, they've always been,
Detailed.
yes, so if I want to dive into something and say, well, I don't want to know how much Joe Smith makes, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like supplies and materials. this is the supplies and materials. Let's say, for example, the supplies and materials for extracurricular high school was like way off the chart. I'd be going, that looks a little not right. But again, I could be by myself on this. I don't know.
No, that makes more sense, that question.
So in budget law, it's just that I can present it this way and have to be able to answer what that means. I can
Okay.
tell you what that means. And so that's why I have my Excel sheet actually ready. If you have a question, what's this $635,000 really?
Right.
Which you asked about for the one grant fund 100. It was on
It
services.
is on page 32. So
So
purchase services, right?
yes, purchase services was 300. And so I just went back and looked, look at this, all your purchase services under all functions, remember? And all your
Right.
functions are broken out in detail in Fund 100 in the budget. So you're typing all your threes of all your functions in all Fund 100, and that equals the summary of the 600 something
Right.
thousand.
I understand that.
Okay, so. do you
But
have any
go ahead.
questions?
So Terry, I think in budget law also, you can make a request for documents also.
Okay, so would I be able to get that or not? The breakdown of what that is? Because I'm assuming that's somewhere in your program.
Yeah, I can always put it in the program and redo it all, but that's not how I presented the budget.
Okay.
So it's just.
And I understand, I appreciate the fact that I can ask you a question and you can answer it, but just to give you an example, the amount of pages in last year's general fund
Yeah. That's
was
also why I did-
89.
Mhm.
We have like, I don't know, 20.
At 10.
So, 10, yeah.
Mhm.
So I guess that's what I'm talking about is just seeing.
Last year's budget, yeah.
It was, and
Broke
I,
it out
like I
by
said, I
function.
appreciate the reason why. I
Mhm.
definitely, and if you only have to do this, then I get that. I just,
We have to show fund and then function,
right,
which it does show the function. And then it actually shows the object.
right,
And
but you
then
don't
your
have to show
FT you have
sub
to show-
ones.
No, you don't have to show
Okay.
sub objects,
Okay.
but you do have to show the FTE.
Right,
So if you have a question to say, what is this amount? Then you can
Okay.
always ask. And really, I can go to my threes and just kind of give you an example of what all your threes entail for the whole Fund 100, if you wanted me to right now. It includes your electricity and garbage and all that stuff.
no, that's not even as detailed as last year's. That's more detail. I don't really care what the garbage was, sorry, but I'm just talking about if a certain department
Mhm.
is spending more money than they should spend, like high school or middle school or sped or whatever is there, you can't tell it's all together.
Okay, that's why on page 30, let's just go through page 30 a little bit.
Yeah, I think this is a good summary
Page
here.
30 is a summarization of your functions. And
Right, I
it
saw that.
says that, and that is not just, and you can see that actuals for 2021 were 667, then 1.2.
Which
proposed-
line are you on?
No, I understand that. 1132 on that page, if you go all the way over, was budgeted for $109,764 for last year on page
Mhm.
30.
Yeah.
Okay, so this page I just gave to Ryan and passed out. That's the total right there, 109,764.
Mhm.
There's 27 categories that make up that total.
Mhm.
Yep. So that is my question. I understand, I can see the total. And we could, you're right, though. We could go down and ask you like, okay, what's this total? And you could break out those 25 or whatever they are and tell us, I guess.
But in this summary page here, I provide a lot of summary pages so that you can
You do?
actually see year to year and then like at a big picture. Because you can actually see our low and then increase and then our, of course, budget is not actuals. And then we're coming back low. So you can actually see what is high school. That's why I explained the elementary K-5, but maintenance, let's go with transportation, maybe. you can just compare, you can compare your function level. And then, of course, page 35 through 141 is the
Right.
broken out detail.
What I
But
think
I-
I'm hearing her say,
Mhm.
and correct
I
me if
know.
I'm wrong, is in this example, it shows athletic uniforms, $6,000.
Mhm.
Now, Terry and I could think $6,000 is pretty high when we know that there's a local grant that helps support uniforms, when that $6,000 could be used on facilities, it could be used on another coach, it could be used on an AED.
Or we already have new
oxygen,
uniforms.
Or, you know what I'm saying? So I think it would help us say, why don't we put a little bit more of this over here versus $6,000 for new uniforms? If we have that information, we can.
It's
make more
kind,
educated.
yes. And it's kind of like going to
decisions.
it's like doing your budget at home. You do your budget at home. I figure I'm gonna spend $800 a month on groceries, right? That's my budget, $800. But yet, if I spend that $800, what am I actually buying in my groceries for $800? You see what I'm saying? Am I buying like soda that I don't need, or wine that I do need, or whatever? But I'm just saying that that's what I'm talking about. But like I said, that's just my thought process on it, is just looking, and maybe that's nitpicking too much. I don't know. I'm just,
You're pushing buttons.
that's my budget history.
Not tonight. I could
know,
I
not
could redo
tonight.
the whole budget and that'd be fine.
No, that'll be a lot.
No, it's a matter of just. it's a
And
matter
to
of a
ask
pivot
others,
table.
don't just do something for me. So I,
Well, with Jamie's, I think it's hard to do. You have to have a higher number, even though if you think it's high, because if you don't get that grant or get that money, you still have to account for that. So she's expecting to spend that money.
Mhm.
And if you get a grant, great. You don't spend that money, you can down the road move it. But we have to expect to spend this money
But if
without
we
getting
just
extra.
bought- But if we just know, we talked about budget, we just spent $6,000 in new uniforms, but here's.
Which we
another
did last year.
$6,000 in this year's budget for new uniforms. We don't need uniforms every single year.
Right.
So, yeah, to me.
So we could
it's-
allocate those funds elsewhere. It's like, no, we just did this.
Which
But we
we're not
can't
saying
grant-
that
we
there
can't
is
count on
in
grant
there.
money is what I'm saying. We
Right.
have to count
You
on
have
what
to-
the budget we're getting.
Right.
right.
But with this example, $6,000, if we just bought them last year, they're good for 2 or 3
Yeah.
years.
It just appears less transparent. It just, and that's because.
Not
we're-
intentionally at all.
We're just used to, I mean, I've been on the
Well-
budget committee lots of times, and that's how we're used to seeing it. So it's nothing, I mean, I like the looks of yours.
I love your appendix. I love
Um,
all the information in it.
But it's
It's
just,
just,
it's just
the
less
same
than-
numbers are gonna be presented, but in a different way. So I can always present them with a detailed object code. But it won't be tonight's presentation.
All right.
Thank you.
Because it does take a little bit of time to get them done.
Are there specific ones you want to see fleshed out? Like I've been hearing athletics a lot. Is that one?
No,
thing?
and honestly, we're gonna all peruse this budget differently, but we're gonna all look at the budget, right? But let's say Joni has a kid that loves STEM, right? She's gonna kind of look at that and be like, oh, okay, I can see that. I love athletics. So that was my first, I was like, oh, I'm gonna look up athletics, and I don't have, and what Jamie's saying is accurate in the fact that I'm not saying you guys have $6,000 in uniforms for this year. That's not what she's saying
No.
either. What she's saying is breaking it down and going along with what they have. The one thing is also, like you said, you have the FTEs in a lot of the places that show that stuff, but like licensed salaries, classified salaries. I mean, it's not anything one specific. It's with the transparency of being able to look at something if you wanted to see the specifics of it. And SPED is a huge program, right? That's what is that? 12 or 1250 is less restrictive programs, students with disabilities. Is that not SPED? Is that something else?
No, that's good.
That's
Okay.
good.
50.
So there's a lot of money in there. That's $1.457 million.
Which is none too small.
Right, exactly. So within that budget, but employee contribution pickup is $50,000, which is what Naomi was talking, not that you can change it. I'm just saying it's 50,000. And managerial classified, $132,000. So I'm just saying that if we had that information, we might be able to come up with specific questions that we would be like, hey, what is this? Or why are we paying? Have you guys, when's the last time you guys negotiated your health insurance? Because it's $171,000. And how much do people pay any of that? Or does the school pay all of it? Just things like that.
That's assumed in our budget assumptions that was presented, $1,250, the employer.
Okay, yes, you're right. I just used that as
But
an
yeah,
example. Right.
Yes, I understand that, but it-
Okay.
that one has not changed. And if the employee uses less than the 1,200, that's where the school district can save
Right.
money.
And
No.
I'm perfectly prepared to just ask questions on all those ones that I'm interested in. too.
Okay,
I mean,
that's fine.
I mean,
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, my hand's been up, so I'm just gonna interrupt if that's okay.
Oh, sorry, Christine.
It's okay. You guys are engaged and that's great. Well, my first question is, are we ending at 8 o'clock tonight or are we just going to eternity?
Eternity.
Eternity.
I
I wanna-
suggest maybe making it 8:30 and then
Okay.
redoing the budget to show the objects. But
Unless you guys
some of
don't,
the
if you guys don't want to
questions.
redo the budget and you want to finish this tonight, that's all on you. I can vote however I want.
So can I wait? Hold on. So I want, thank you for the 8:30 timeframe. To Joni's point that she spoke of last meeting of having an organized structure, I am just going to be very blunt. We are circling and not getting any answers because we're not actually having an organized conversation. So can I make a suggestion that before we recess, that we actually develop a plan of how we're going to go through the budget next meeting? Because I think there are a lot of questions, and to Joni's point, I think that each of us can probably ask questions as we kind of go through functions of the budget, and to get a better understanding, but then also be able to go through the budget, because I feel like I've yet to go through it with this group.
Well, right now, tonight, I was just supposed to go through the presentation of the questions that were asked via email and then asking of new questions. That was my portion, and then the rest was on the agenda.
And Lorraine, so I'm clear, I'm not trying to criticize that at all. I was just hoping we could develop a plan of how we're going to do this next meeting so that we can start working through the pages of the budget before we recess this evening.
So I hear what you're saying in terms of that level of specificity. I think Lorraine is complying with the budget law in terms of her presentation. And so if there's specific areas that you're wanting to ask questions about, I would suggest that that's kind of where we're at, but it's really up to you guys.
That's
If we can just have Lorraine go through and present her budget, and then you guys dialogue and ask questions, I think we can take care of this.
yeah, maybe we can let Lorraine finish her presentation. And then see where we're at, like if we feel like we've got those questions.
Well, I
answered.
think she was like going through her questions and answering the questions that the emails were.
I was.
I know, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah,
So
that's what we're trying to
it just
do.
so happens that 4 of them were mine. So I can't help that. So
So can
that's fine as far as what Joni
we-
said.
I would suggest we go. through what you
Continue?
Continue
Okay.
to answer those questions that were placed to us, because that was the plan. to begin
Okay.
with.
So the next slide is just the resolution I passed out and showed you that it's also on page 161 of your 22-23's adopted budget. It's also in the new current budget on page 154 as a sample. It doesn't have a resolution in it because it hasn't been adopted yet, but it's a sample of the role of everything. So that's why that was a question that was asked to present one of those from last year's budget.
You say 161
That's on the old.
of, I know, it,
154.
yeah, that must have been after the budget was approved because mine only goes up to 109,
And mine doesn't have
last
one.
year's budget. I
The
know.
adopted budget, yeah.
Right,
149, that one.
which I don't think we ever got a copy.
It's on the website.
Okay.
Your adopted budget's on the
Okay.
website. The next one is about enrollment trends. This was on there last meeting. But I kept it there. Because there was questions about how the enrollment trends. So going to the next slide, I left that there to show the But then here was a little bit of a breakdown of your enrollment, not with weights, to what makes up that 419. Your kindergartners. And then in, of course, Learn at Home K-3 model versus K-12 model. And these are not with weights. Going past that, I've attached.
I'm
Oh.
sorry, can you go back up to that just a second?
That's our next page.
You're expecting 100 or 55 kindergartners at Learn at Home?
Hold on just a second. I need to.
That's what I said. It seemed high.
Yeah, that's not
That's
weighted.
that's two teachers. Again,
That's
that's,
where that 400,000. They're hoping to double.
Right,
yes, right,
teacher
right.
capacity, 2 teachers at each grade level.
right.
Yeah, but it looks like third doesn't need it unless they really come in with good students. I mean, a lot of students.
But it
The
does
grade's
say
kinda low.
122. Can't read that. Yeah.
21,
Never mind. I figured it out.
total
Okay.
177 enrollment goal.
Move. Do you have any more questions on that?
Nope.
Moving to the next slide, it's just a breakout and it's kind of actually, never mind, I thought I broke this out to the detail level, but I decided not to again. The object levels for this is the Learn at Home sub area of 68612, which is your Learn at Home budget. And it's broken out between 2 slides because it's kind of small if you put it all in one slide. And it just breaks it out. This second slide will show
Where
at
we
the
at?
very bottom, the second
Am I in the right
slide
one?
Yeah.
Okay,
is the 2 combined. So it's 1.129555 is the full Learn at Home budget for expenditures, creating more or less 8.0 FTE with that. The next slide shows we have 495, more or less $500,000 of that 1.1 Learn at Home budget is SPED related costs. So that's important to remember with our MOE issue. The next slide shows a little bit of our, not a little bit, our revenue from Learn at Home proposed K-12, K-3, 217, that's including your weights. So it's 177 plus your weights to make it 217. Making it your value per extended ADMW, which is 9,400 per ADMW, giving us a revenue gain of the 2 million. Our proposed expenditures for the whole program are the 1.1, giving us a gain on this program out of the general fund. We want to make sure we keep in mind that our enrollment numbers, we need to keep up our enrollment numbers. And that's Learn at Home is helping us do that to support a full charter school. Our charter school offers a Learn at Home program. We also need to remember that MOE still has to be met if we get rid of Learn at Home or not. So it's a more of an issue onto the brick and mortar. And about 500,000 of that is part of that 1.1. Higher enrollment also helps the district with additional grant funds revenues. So we want to remember that with how we redesign the expenditures on Learn at Home, this is helping our general fund beginning fund balance. I mean, our general fund balance expenses.
if we didn't have Learn at Home, we'd still have to spend,
We'd lose 2
That.
million.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Mm,
So
So if you're, so I'm just trying to clarify, understand. So if we didn't have Learn at Home with a reduced enrollment, we'd still have to spend that total
Mhm.
number of SPED, even though our
Mhm.
enrollment
that
went
number right
down.
there. Mhm.
But wouldn't that number decrease because in your
Mhm.
original thing where you
Mhm.
said those 4 rules of MOE,
Mhm.
if your numbers go down in kids, then, but you said it takes a while.
Takes a while. Yeah.
Step it down gradually.
So that's why we're looking at some facilities expenditures, because that would be
Right.
immediate, but then staffing takes at least a year to decrease. So
So you'd have to
staffing,
spend that now, but you wouldn't have to spend that next year if you lost, let's say 50 kids in sped. That would go
Uh,
I
down.
don't know if you ever do that.
what's that?
The losing was 50 kids. in
I was just using that. I'm
I
just
think it's
saying,
50,
and
but yeah,
as an example.
school wide.
But we
Right.
wouldn't.
The
we
reduction in
wouldn't get to
numbers.
deduct it for 23, 24,
Right,
maybe
Right,
24,
right.
25.
right.
So
Right.
no matter what, we have to spend
I
that
know,
money
yeah.
in 23,
Right.
24.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Which would hurt us a lot.
So if
Right.
you look at this one, this is a great one to show that disparity. I'm trying to look, find the.
1250,
125,
But that's-
yes,
there's-
1250,
other 320s, which is the area of responsibility.
right.
So that's not our full.
It's not the full picture, but it shows the trend. So in 2021, our basically our MOE, 667,000, jumped almost doubled within 1 year. That's when we found lots of things attached to that MOE that didn't belong there. And somebody went shopping wild. And then in 22, 23, it became that. And then now we're trying to propose it down, but that's with some expenditures in facilities that we hope to be able to bring that down to that. But we're still talking with ODE on what is eligible and what isn't. But it shows us the issue we have. And if you went to before 2021, you would see even a lower number than the 667.
So 300. What do the case numbers look like in reference to those numbers? Is that
Uh,
10?
They went up minimally. It didn't, if you graph this,
Right.
it's a like
Right.
this. If you, and on the same graph, you graph the kids,
It's
it's just a
correct.
slight,
Okay.
it certainly didn't warrant.
Double.
No, didn't at all. And that's why we're in the predicament we're in right now.
Understood.
Yeah.
That's a part of why we're in the predicament.
A
right?
part, yes, a part of it.
So this budget is proposed as with Learn at Home, with their enrollment, with their revenue, and also the fact that we are offering an online program as a charter district. The next slide is just again our transfers, so that you can become well aware that we are transferring to the athletic program, bus replacement, which is a big expenditure this year, coming out of our general fund to pay for our leases and buses. And then nutrition of 123 is transferred from the general fund. You can see that we had to pay more last year to fix that beginning fund balance. And we have about, that's what makes up your $546,000 transferring out of your general fund to go to special revenue funds. The next page, last meeting, this subject came up of our bond payments, and I just wanted to again reiterate. So this was the telling or asking for the 97,000 as a rate for our bond and interest payments being levied. So the next page is, again, we showed that, showing that we actually have payments of 91,000 for the next year. The next slide is a new slide, and it has actually it's estimated. We estimated it on 95.4% collection rate. And it kind of tells you what is going to happen in the future for 20 years out. You're going to go up. You went 97, 101, 106. And it also tells you your ending fund balance, which you kind of see in ending fund. It's 18, kind of goes down. We're using up our beginning fund balance a little bit for 20 years. At the end of that slide, you see at the end of your your bond payments, it's about 4,000. But yeah, so, but you can also see on the side of how much per year divvied out to everybody. If everybody was getting an increase each year of $5,000 divvied out for everybody, that's not such a hit as to say we are now jumping this year 15,000 divvied out versus the 4,000 or the 5,000. That's how the bond payments work. So that's why the 97,000 is come. That's why we're posing 97,000. This is just reiterating again in case we needed to present it during our presentation. Of course, we have the motion to approve, and then if there was any questions on the FTE on second to the last slide,
I have questions on that.
second to the last slide.
Oh, this one? We'll keep going.
Okay. Scroll up. Okay.
There we go.
So let me make sure I put it out on Word in case didn't answer some of the questions. some of the question was the sub-functions. And that's where I explained page 30 was the comparison of the functions of our actuals. So that answers that question. Page 1, function 1250 was a question, and that's actually detailed on page 37 of the budget if you wanted, but it's still rolled objects, so that doesn't answer that part. The other question that came through was,
Supposed to be on a certain page.
no,
or-
this is mine.
Okay.
Page. Okay, I was gonna let you know again on page 32 and 31 of the current budget, it actually shows your comparison of objects from year to year for the general fund. That's where that summary, and there's summaries. Those are summaries, and then the details are in the meat of your budget. Which is page 35 through 141. Another question that came up was the beginning fund balances, which I told you about the change. Oh, that was the question if you wanted to find a resolution, and I provided the resolution to you guys from the adopted budget. You wanted a breakdown of the $635,000 and what that contains. So let me just really quickly tell you what it contains a little bit, just to answer these questions. The general fund. And we're going to go with object of 3s. And the 635, and I want to go with just zeros. Okay, so your 635 in your general fund makes up, your copier leases,
Your what?
copier leases.
Okay.
So we have copier leases in there, teacher professional development, professional development and travel, so mileage reimbursements that come through for your people, like your sped director is one of them, or any your athletic, not your athletics on this, but anybody that goes on PD and they have mileage reimbursements. Telephone, it pays for telephone. It pays for also, this is 320 is included in this number. So it pays for student evaluations, IEP. So we have some vendor contracts that we have to pay for that. This includes, of course, online, the 600. So we have, that's Presence Learning is online, is a big one there. We have some psych that we have to pay for. We have nursing services, some other mileage. We have postage, advertising, CPA firm, your legal services, all those outside vendor things that have to do with, advertising, conferences if they have to go to the OSBA conference for professional development. Some big items are 15,000. So rentals. So if we have, radio communication for transport, so transportation's in here as well on that 600, that's 635,000, it's all general fund. So we have radios and then CPR trainings and, and different IT
The
items.
635,000 is
It's-
entitled what? What's?
Oh, it's
Purchase services.
purchase services. So
service.
it's all general fund, purchase services, 625,000. That includes Learn at Home, sped, and brick and mortar, everything. Purchase services. So,
And contracts, right? Vendor contracts.
yeah, I mean, that's what purchase services are.
What's the
It's
total of the vendor contracts?
I don't have it, just vendor contracts.
Oh, you don't have the dollar amounts attached?
I do have the dollar, that's how
Oh.
I created, but I don't have just vendor contracts.
Oh.
This is,
Okay.
This is encompassing of everything.
Yeah, I was
Professional
kind of
development,
like
and travel
down,
and
so. We have, COSA conferences, yeah, there's lots of things. So it can break it out, but that it gives a detail of kind of what even if I do break it out by object, that's kind of what the details behind the notes that I
Right.
made this budget off of are. The other question that answers the 635. The other question was about RIFs and layoffs, and that's, I just have it as not as it's not part of this proposed budget as giving a number of who's getting laid off.
So the question was, how many people, not jobs or RIF, were laid off? And we're right in the middle of the RIF process. And the best indicator I can give you right now is that spreadsheet that you guys have. And that is the plan. Notice it's entitled RIF Plan number 1. And, but things change. Like today, I met with a number of staff in terms of delivering their pink slips. And one of them chose to resign instead of go through the RIF process. And okay, so they resigned. So that doesn't become a RIF position. That would shift over to be a
Right.
natural attrition position. You know, we're still saving the money. We're still not
Right.
supporting the position. It's just how it's accounted for is going to be different. So it's really hard to answer that at this point until all the dust is settled. There's a lot of staff that still have a chance for in this next week to say, I enact my bumping rights, and there's a whole other process we have to go through with that. You know, so that could affect numbers and how many, you never know. So it's,
What is that?
bumping rights are afforded through the certified collective bargaining agreement. And that says, like, for instance, if you're a math teacher, I'm a math teacher, I get riffed and I want your job, I can notify the superintendent and the union that I want to bump your position. But then we have to evaluate it in terms of seniority, licensure, and competence. Competence by state law says what your experience has been in the last 5 years of service. Also, what kind of qualifications do you have? And
Performance evaluations if we had them.
yeah, it's not merit. The board chose to not include
right.
merit because we just don't have enough of a track
Data.
record with the evaluation process yet. So it's more of a competence thing. So say, for instance, you were middle school math, I was high school math, I got bumped, but I have no experience teaching middle school math.
I could come in.
You would have more competence in that area than myself because I've not taught middle school math, even though we're both licensed, you know? But so you have to look at all those areas in terms of bumping rights. And so that's kind of the next step of the process. So you know, this process might take some time. So it's hard to answer that question at this point, is all I'm trying to say.
So the other questions had to do with what's our opening balances, which was presented already.
Yeah.
Our indirect rate, which we mentioned that. And then about the PERS, there was a question about our audit and PERS, and just that the budget presents actuals on revenue and expenditures for 2 prior years, and then shows your modified adopted and your proposed for revenue and expenditures. So it doesn't have to do with liability of actuality, what the audit has to do in their notes.
But
So
I
it's
was,
not going to
I
show.
was
as part of
concerned
that.
because you've got negative on the audit, you have more outlays than you inflows on.
Yeah, it's
PERS.
how,
And will we ever have to make that up?
no,
I mean, it's on the liabilities that way.
yeah, it's a law to be part of your budget, but your current budgets will never show that expenditures.
Right. I'm just wanting to know, how would we make that up if we had to?
It's just for reporting purposes. It's actuarial. I can't even say the word right. Actuarial.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out best way to explain this. So PERS obligations come through, you know, the collective bargaining agreement and state law. And what you're saying is you were seeing a negative.
I saw that there were more outflows that looked as far as liability than inflows as far as us recording to cover those costs on the balance sheet.
Right. And that was through the audit.
So
Yeah,
will we
that would
ever
be
have
your
to
area.
make
The
that up?
audit actually shows and has to do the couple pages on the PERS.
Yeah, I
actual.
got it.
Okay,
I
so
got it. I
but
just
the
wanna know,
budget
do
side
we
of
have to make
things-
that money up? Ever?
no, because we've expended and we got the money for it. So that we're showing actuals. That is showing our liability for the
Right.
years and years and years and years and
Right.
years to come.
Right.
We never, as a district, should have to show that on our budget process.
We never have to pay it.
Not unless you, no, not for that.
Okay.
So It's an audit
Write that
law,
down.
so I can always
I don't
Look
know how
at
to
it.
flesh that out more.
look
I
that
see
up.
where you're coming from.
Yeah,
I just don't know how to answer it.
Usually if there's a negative liability,
Yeah,
you owe some money back somewhere.
right. But that's not how the PERS process works. It's an audited figure. And so I would
and
have,
they show it that way just because they have to show it for reporting purposes.
yeah.
but
we
That's the
would-
PERS program, right?
Yeah.
That's like, the old PERS gets way more than the new.
Yeah,
PERS to kind of
exactly.
make
So
up
they
for
have
that.
to offset it.
To offset.
That's why I
So
think that's
it's the
what that
state that actually
actuary
did that.
something.
So
Yes.
that's their negative, not our
Yes.
But the
negative.
debit and the credit, the
Yeah.
offset,
Yeah.
and the inflows, the outflows go into the fund balance
Mhm.
that we
Yeah.
have reported.
Yeah,
So if we're using the fund balance.
For government, yeah, well, there's the fund balances that I
Restricted,
showed you are
unrestricted.
actually, the actual cash flowing over. You have government wide and you have, the others. If you want more information on that, I can, but that has nothing to do with our budget in the fact that we are not going to be having to pay that back in the proposed budget.
Okay.
For sure. So, yeah, good question. The other question was about unemployment.
Yes.
And unemployment. And maybe I need to clarify self-funded, because actually we get a bill. We're not self-funded exactly. I guess, never mind, backing up. We collect the expenditure every single month and it hits the expense side when we run a payroll person. So it goes to an expense account and then goes to a liability account.
Right.
That liability account lays out there until we actually pay for the unemployment benefit. So the best thing is, so I've increased the fact that every time I run a payroll to make that 80,000 or 90,000, every time I run a payroll, it's going to hit the expense side. So it's going to hit us our expenses. And then if we actually use and get the bill, then it's going to release the liability. And then at the end of the year, if you have more in your liability, then I'll reverse it and say, let's take it back out of the expenses and release that liability. So it'll be zero. So every year we'll have to build in to our unemployment.
So you
To
don't have a
build.
required reserve account that the state requires?
No, we're not there. We actually, that's why we're self-funded. So they can,
But they require it. I know.
I think
I'm
it's
taking up time, but-
0.001. And so we do like $1,000, but that's not when what the bills come through at.
Right.
It's way higher than that. So
Right.
we give out a little bit like $1,000. But
and let me answer from the superintendent standpoint. I've built budgets for years. And it all depends on you. You kind of rub at the crystal ball in terms of
I get
your
it.
economic times.
I
Gee, are
get
you
it.
going through a riff? What's going on? And then kind of a prediction of how many people do we think will be actually filing for unemployment? Like right now, I know we're going through a riff, but at the
Mhm.
same time, I'm seeing a record number of openings out there, job opportunities.
Were you asking if the amount that was allocated was enough? Are you feeling it's not substantial
Right.
enough?
If you do the math at 12 or 24 weeks, even at 12 weeks, even if you have half the people collect unemployment, $80,000 is not enough money. But like you said, you don't know who's
We-
gonna
we
go
don't-
out and
we
get
just
a
don't know.
job.
Yeah, we just don't know,
Which if that, let's just say for laughs, that happens, not laughs as in,
Mhm,
but
sure.
let's say that happens. And you're looking at that, what do you guys do with the budget? Do you shuffle something into that?
We would have to shuffle some money around, yes.
that's why you have that 120 operating contingency,
Right?
but
Mhm,
we hopefully won't have to use that.
right, right.
It's-
Right.
hopefully not.
We're very hopeful. Now, if we didn't see the number of job openings, like go back in the 80s, sometimes even one PE teaching position was open for the entire state. That's a different story. That's pretty much, yeah, I do some riffs. All these people are gonna be applying for unemployment
Right.
And staying on it.
and staying on it. So,
They just increased the base rate too. for unemployment.
mhm,
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
like $760 or something. That's for people that make it the top,
right,
not
right,
for
right,
people that make it the lower part.
right. Yeah.
I'm just concerned in procedure as far as, recording reserves. for those kind of elements instead of just having to pay point blank.
You would rather see an account build up.
A reserve account.
Yeah.
I think especially during the RIF, just to make sure that we're
And I'm
in good
surprised the
faith
state
taking
didn't
care of.
require us to do it.
A separate reserve account, you're saying?
Mhm.
I don't believe I've seen that requirement.
We get a bill and we just pay it. It's
Right.
Yeah.
Just a build service.
Maybe because you're school, I don't know.
Some of the other questions were, what was the $100,000 on non-federal reporting line? That's more or less, this is for state grants. It's Fund 250 if you're inquiring. State grants that come in throughout the year. So this is in and out revenues and expenditures appropriation. So I like to actually do special grants, resolutions as they come in throughout the year. You've seen that this year, but this is what was built. I kind of followed last year's example, but that's why that 100,000 it's just built there for state grants that might come in and out throughout the year. So,
And these could be grants for, suddenly there's a grant for increasing the number of fire detect alarms in school.
This is only this is only one-sided. This is an expenditure. $100,000.
no, you have,
Non-federal
you
reporting.
should always have a resource and expenditures
Yeah.
on Fund 250.
Okay,
So in your
so
resource
you're saying
line,
the 100 is,
it's
coming from
lined up for the
somewhere?
3299, which is your state source, and it should be,
okay.
Revenue
Well,
is
it's-
251 Student Success Act.
no, 250.
I don't get- I don't
So
get
it should be right above is your resources, and then, is it not according to that?
Revenue.
Okay.
there.
Revenues and then expenses, so that's really not used, but
So what's it used for? The 100
it's,
is an
it's,
expense.
if there's resolution, it's in the budget if we get state grants. It's coded to state revenue 3299, which is state revenue, and then coded out in expenditures to the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, I think. for
So like
function
we get,
level. So
we get
it's,
$10,000 grant to increase the fire alarms. If the 10,000 comes in, goes into that account, and then it goes out. It's a placeholder.
Okay. So
um,
the terminology, non-federal reporting is kind of.
it says non-federal reporting. That was the
Right.
original name a long time ago. It just, anyways, that was the name of that fund. The next question was about the understanding of the SIA grant and district requirements of spending, and we showed that part. It also was about the enrollment numbers, brick and mortar versus learn at home. That's shown in the FTE. Excuse me, on the FTE. I was going to show the fact that it does say learn at home down at the bottom. If you're online, learn at home, it shows your FTE there. And then if you have, so that's the 4 main ones.
So it only shows the instructional teachers, right? It doesn't show any administrators or secretarial or anything that I could tell.
And
Even smaller.
and then you can also see where I've stuck it in the special revenues of 1.0 if needed. And then I didn't have it -L. I have it over somewhere in here support. I have it a little bit on the district-wide reporting, both learn at home and brick and mortar, both learn at home and brick and mortar. But yes, you're
What
correct
page
on
is- Oh,
page
151.
151. And it tells you your titles, but there's a TOSA, teacher on
So-
special assignment.
So in terms of building this budget, we had to get to the point where we had to cut the admin position that was assigned to learn at home to balance the budget. There is a number of ways that you can look at in terms of leading that online program. And one of them, what she's talking about, is a teacher on a special assignment, like a lead teacher. That is one option. And so when we had to pull the trigger on the budget, I said, we'll just build a TOSA in for now, but we're still having those conversations in terms of how are we going to be supporting learn at home administratively. And we're rolling Krista into those conversations, and we're trying to think out of the box how we're gonna do this.
On this FTE, I know I asked you the question on page 151 about how do you adjust it? So I can see at least 6 jobs that should be on here for athletics that aren't on here.
Oh, you did have an athletics question and
And
that
I
was-
just picked this one because Jamie had mentioned the wrestling coach, but there's also, so how do you shuffle? Like, let's say you need 6 more jobs in this. There's no assistant coaches for basketball, volleyball, girls, boys, stuff like that. So do you like take a number from somewhere else? Like, how does this not go outside the budget when you start adding these other people in?
So this is the FTE for the budget. This is
Right.
what I built the wages and benefits off of.
Correct.
This is exactly off that. And so if you're not going to use one of your programs, and that's not, can you go up one slide? To show athletics, if you're not going to, let's just, for purposes of this conversation,
Right.
let's just say you're not going to use your softball coach.
Okay,
Well, you need a wrestling coach.
right.
That's,
Okay.
but you need to say, I'm not going to use something in order to use something, and it must match this FTE as far as wages and stuff. like that.
That's what I'm saying is every volleyball game has an assistant coach. Every volleyball head coach has an assistant coach. Every basketball has an assistant coach. There is no assistant coaches in this whole thing.
Sometimes those have to be volunteer positions.
And they do. That's what I'm asking though. How is that? Is there a reason why these aren't factored in? Or is it, like you said, just moving things so that it equals the 1.37?
For the
or
most
any
part, but I did
category.
ask the athletic director to
Okay,
go over his budget with me. This is
Okay.
what we agreed on. This is what I think I'll need. This is our best estimate.
okay,
And that's how we came up with that number.
Okay.
So
And you kind of heard Eric use the phrase lean and mean.
yes.
That's exactly.
No,
what
and that
Use the
was-
assistants in middle school, because number one, your numbers are higher.
Right.
Student to coach ratio is gonna be lower.
Well, football
an
has
assistant.
assistant too for high school, and
Mhm.
that is just the other thing. And you're right, maybe it's volunteers
Yeah,
and that's fine.
yeah.
I just wanted to know, even in any of these categories, not just athletics, if there's something that changes, you still have to keep
It
this
has-
total the same.
Yeah, it has to stay
Okay.
within that
Okay.
that realm. Absolutely.
Okay.
Else you'd have to go.
Yes,
outside and
that
get more.
was my,
Yes.
how that
Yes, and
worked.
you just shift those things around. And so like, say football, we just have 50 kids that come out.
Right,
We only, we only have head football coach and assistant. We're gonna need more assistants. That's when we reach to.
Okay.
volunteers. Absolutely.
that was, okay. I
So-
was almost done with my questions because it is 8:30. And I do want to mention on here also, if you don't need bus monitors or every other thing that was on here or different things, that you don't have to fill all of these positions. That what this shows is how our budget was built.
Right, right.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. I mean, I have more questions, but time is up, right? 8:30. So see if I can find my agenda.
Was it helpful to do this format, do you think? With
Recess
People
meeting
email the
tonight.
questions and then we
mean-
present the answers?
I mean, I think those are questions we need answered to. I'm struggling right now with how we're gonna get through this
Me too.
productively. I don't have a solution. I think we all have so many questions. I don't know, Ristine, did you have an idea of a format? I mean, maybe we should just start going through it page by page. Maybe do the revenue, or maybe you guys think we've all done that revenue enough. I don't know. I still have questions.
I have a question on that.
Because so we had presentations and then we just kind of jumped in with questions and didn't really do it systematically. And so I didn't always feel like I could ask a question.
I liked how we did it last year, and that was page by page.
That's
There
all
was
I
an
need.
I'm gonna
explanation.
agree with Jamie on that.
Yeah.
It was
It
really
was
helpful to kind of go page by
An
page,
explanation,
ask
you looked at
questions that were
revenue
really,
And expenses.
So is that what we focus on next time, you think?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, so do we want to go through those revenue sheets first or the ADM, or are we done with that?
I have more questions on the ADM and the revenue, but just 2. So
Yeah.
however you want.
What
to
if we go through these state school fund ADM, talk about that a little bit more and then go page by page,
Sounds
revenue
good.
and expenditures.
What do you think?
And yeah, however they want to do it.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
so we're focusing on next time,
And
right?
I would like to ask, I agree with Terry. I like to see more detail. I'd like to know within those lumps where things are going. So if you don't present that to us, please be prepared to answer those questions.
And when you answer the question, so to give you an example, when we were talking about purchase services, if I look at one of those numbers, like let's say 11, I don't know, 27, and I say, can you tell me what those are? Are you going to give me words and the numbers that go with them, or just the words?
I will
Like when
give
you do, like the one
What
that,
makes up the budget. So
Okay, thank you.
$11,000 is
okay,
what does this $11,000 make up?
right,
Then I
okay,
can tell you what the
Perfect.
$11,000.
that's
makes up.
perfect.
Any more comments for online people? All right, so we have a plan.
I'll make a motion to recess the meeting till May 9th at 6 PM.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Just remember, next week's Spirit Week and Teacher Appreciation Week,
Ready to dress up.
so everybody better come.
What's Tuesday's plan?
I think Tuesday is,
We're gonna look like
I don't know. Is that the twin day? No, Wednesday's the twin day, I think. That's gonna be funny.
Disney Princess Day.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, great.
Disney Princess.
It can be
Day.
Ariel.
Please.
So we're just a Disney character.
You know, like
Wear my Mickey Mouse ears.
Staff was required to